playing as Tathagata in Marvel, I suppressed Thanos for 500 years. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 The Aerospace Aircraft Carrier Crashed. Chapter 51 The Aerospace Carrier Has Crashed. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 51 The Aerospace Carrier Has Crashed. Someone brought this up, sparking curiosity and confusion. It was a bit unbelievable. But then, someone else exclaimed in surprise, "Fuck, that question isn't important. What's important is, didn't you hear Tathagata Buddha say, perhaps in the future we'll regain our former glory?" What does that mean? It means we might return to the glory of ancient times. Then we might even be able to learn their skills. I heard it, but since you were discussing Professor Lin, I didn't say anything. Fuck, your interpretation is so clear. Is it true? Discussion swirled. People were excited, and began to envision the future. Chen Haitian was also excited. He also understood the meaning of Tathagata Buddha's phantom's words. If only that were true, Chen Haitian said excitedly, hoping that what he was imagining was true. He looked at Sun Wukong again. Now that Tathagata Buddha had left, it was probably his turn to go, right? Chen Haitian was about to watch Lin Feng leave. But suddenly, something occurred to him, and he hesitated. Then, he made up his mind and hurried in the direction of Lin Feng. Lin Feng had just controlled the Tathagata Buddha's phantom to say those words to pave the way for the mythical role he would later play. At this moment, he heard the excited sounds in the city, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Then, he was about to leave. But suddenly, a shout came from below. "Wait! Please wait!" Hearing the shout, Lin Feng paused and looked over. He saw an acquaintance running over. "It's him," Lin Feng thought to himself. He and Chen Haitian had met twice. Once, when they fought the destroyer. Another time, when he had played Tathagata Buddha and went to the Ministry of State Security. He must be a leader of the Ministry of State Security. What does he want? Lin Feng wondered. He didn't understand why the other party called him. Chen Haitian ran to Lin Feng's side, panting, "Mr. Sun, please wait a moment. What can I do for you?" "I'm the director of China's Ministry of State Security," Chen Haitian introduced himself. After catching his breath, he said, "I'm planning to create an organization for superhumans. Are you interested in joining?" Chen Haitian looked respectful and smiled. But he was nervous. He wondered if his actions were disrespectful. Lin Feng understood what he meant. He was trying to recruit him, Sun Wukong, to join the official organization. But after a moment's thought, he put himself in Sun Wukong's shoes and said, "A superhuman organization? What is that? I don't understand, Lin Feng said, waving his hands. Chen Haitian was stunned for a moment, then, realizing what he meant, explained, "It's about inviting people like you, who possess superhuman powers, to form a department, essentially a government agency." "You mean to become an official?" Yes, that's right," Chen Haitian said with a smile. But Lin Feng immediately shook his head and said, No, I, old son, have a problem with being an official. Let's talk about this later. Goodbye." With that, Lin Feng transformed into a streak of light and flew away at breakneck speed, soon vanishing. Chen Haitian stood there in a daze. He felt strangely rejected. But even though it was a rejection, the other party didn't seem to take his presumptuous invitation as a sign of indifference. This reassured him somewhat. Thor stood there, watching the direction Lin Feng's streaking flight took. He had heard the conversation between Lin Feng and Chen Haitian. He thought for a moment, and made a decision. Guyi stared at Lin Feng's departure in a daze. He seemed lost in thought, already making a plan. Meanwhile, aboard the aerospace carrier, Nick and Captain America watched the screen displayed on their tablet. Sun Wukong had flown away. This alien invasion of Earth through the space tunnel was finally over. But this incident would undoubtedly go down in the annals of history. Recalling the fierce battle they had witnessed both in person and on their tablets, the two were still stunned. The vast alien army that obscured the sky, the terrifying, ferocious-looking giant mechanical worms, the golden shadows, Sun Wukong's clones, and so on, everything was awe-inspiring. Nick, in particular, recalled his earlier plan to take advantage of China's misfortune. He realized that if China wanted support, they would have to offer benefits. However, in a battle like that, they were of no help at all. In fact, if Nick hadn't acted decisively and issued the order to return, they might have been mistaken for aliens and destroyed by Sun Wukong. Thinking of this, Nick felt even more certain that his decision to return was the right one. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared. The faces of the two men standing by the railing changed. Nick quickly pulled out his intercom and asked, "What's going on, Chief? There's a strange object flying towards our mothership at top speed." "What?" Nick was startled and asked again, "What is it?" "We don't know yet, but at this speed, if they don't stop, they'll hide us in half a minute." Nick was startled again, feeling somewhat bewildered. Captain America, standing next to him, also looked nervous and surprised. But suddenly, a thought struck him, and he took a breath. His expression changed, and he quickly turned to Nick. "Mr. Fury, I think I know what it is." "You?" Nick was puzzled. Captain America said, "Do you remember when Sun Wukong said another monster had escaped, and then he used his power to condense a glowing stick and threw it?" Nick frowned at this, as if recalling something. But the next second, he was startled, and he remembered everything. Fuck, he hadn't paid much attention at the time, thinking that Sun Wukong was really talking about an alien escaping. But now that he thought about it, the direction Sun Wukong had thrown the missiles seemed to be the same direction his carrier had fled. He'd been too late. Sun Wukong had spotted him. Damn it. With this thought in mind, he quickly shouted into the intercom, "Shoot it down. All air defense systems activated." "Take the thing down." Yes, the other party wasn't sure what was going on, but the director's tone was so urgent, it had to be something bad. Boom 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 boom. Instantly, all the carrier's air defense systems activated, firing shells one after another. Bang boom boom boom. Explosions echoed in a sea of white smoke, making it difficult to see what was happening. Nick and Captain America were terrified, unsure if the missiles would work. But suddenly, a golden light burst through the smoke, hurtling towards the carrier. Nick and Captain America's faces dropped, as if struck by lightning. Bang! With a resounding roar, the golden light pierced the carrier from top to bottom. Under the powerful destructive force, the aerospace carrier immediately exploded with a loud bang. Flames blazed, smoke billowed, debris flew, and the power system was paralyzed on the spot. Without power, the aerospace carrier flying in the air immediately fell to the ground below. Chapter 52 Random Mission Released, play the role of Erlang Shen. Chapter 52, Random Mission Released, play as Erlang Shen, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 52, Random Mission Released, play as Erlang Shen. Boom boom boom. The aerospace carrier, blazing with flames and billowing black smoke, plummeted towards the ground. The American soldiers screamed in panic, at a loss as to what to do. Some were even blown off the aerospace carrier by inertia and air currents. Damn it! Nick clung to the railing tightly, his face filled with panic. At this moment, Captain America appeared from nowhere, carrying a parachute on his back. "Chief, we have to jump out quickly," Captain America said anxiously, clutching the railing. Nick knew it too. But he couldn't move at all. The moment he let go, he felt like he would be carried out by inertia. "I can't move," Nick replied. Captain America understood his intention. He grabbed Nick by the back of his collar and said, "Captain, let go when I count to 3. "What are you doing?" Captain America didn't explain, but continued counting. 1, 2, 3, he threw with all his might, and when he reached 3, Nick, with a look of shock, let go, and was thrown out by Captain America. Nick screamed in panic. He was thrown over 10 meters by Captain America, and he was secretly shocked. Is this the power of a super soldier? But I still can't even compare to Sun Wukong and the others. Nick thought to himself. In that moment, he realized that Captain America was at most a powerful human, but people like Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buda were probably no longer human. Boom boom boom, Captain America looked at Nick, then leaped towards him. He caught him in midair and opened his parachute. With a bang, the parachute opened, and the two of them slowed down their descent. Captain America's parachute was a high-quality military parachute, capable of supporting the weight of 2 strong men. Boom, 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 billowing black smoke and flames, the aerospace carrier plummeted towards the city below. It was New York City. Nick's scalp tingled, his face grim. But he had no power to stop it. The United States didn't have figures like Sun Wukong or Tathagata Buddha. "It's over," Nick gritted his teeth. Bang! With a resounding explosion, the aerospace carrier collided with a massive Statue of Liberty, shattering it. Then, abruptly, it exploded, sending flames soaring into the sky, shaking the earth. The resulting debris and shockwaves spread in all directions with devastating force, flattening every building without exception. In a blink of an eye, the entire city of New York was destroyed, leaving the ground in ruins, smoke and flames everywhere. The aerospace carrier was able to fly because of its powerful propulsion system. An explosion like that would be incredibly destructive. Nick and Captain America gritted their teeth, their expressions tense. News of this quickly spread across the globe, shocking the top brass of the United States. An entire New York City was gone. But they couldn't act out of control. Who should they direct their wrath at? China? What did this have to do with China? China was a victim, too, right? Act out their wrath at Sun Wukong? Put him on trial? That would be sheer madness. What if Sun Wukong came to the United States and wreaked havoc? They'd only destroyed one city now, but what if he destroyed more? Who would bear the responsibility? So, they had no choice but to swallow this loss. Furthermore, they'd taken the initiative to declare that aliens had destroyed New York City. Epic. Swish. A fiery red light flashed. Lin Feng appeared. With a thought, Lin Feng released his persona. A brilliant light emanated from him. The light faded, and he returned to his normal self. Lin Feng glanced at the story of Sun Wukong, which he had compiled on his desk. He'd written it recently and was going to use it in his lectures in the coming days. Then, he said with anticipation, I wonder how many role-playing points I'll get this time. Role-playing points can be used to upgrade a character's role-playing privileges. This is crucial to the strength of the role-playing character. At this moment, a system notification sounded. Ling. This role-playing is being settled. Settlement completed. Congratulations, Master. This role-playing earned a total of 4,889 points. Of these, Sun Wukong earned 4,000 points, and Tathagata Buda earned 889 points. Name, Lin Feng. Character cards, Sun Wukong, Tathagata Buda. Playing points, Sun Wukong 4,078 points, Tathagata Buda 889 points. Note, role-playing points cannot be transferred between characters. Earned role-playing points can only be used for that character. Shock points. 175,382 points. Note, shock points can be used to purchase items in the store, including but not limited to mythical character cards. Lin Feng looked at the virtual panel that popped up. Last time, I upgraded Sun Wukong's role-playing privileges to level 2. I still have 78 role-playing points left. Lin Feng remembered this. He then asked, System, how many points are required to upgrade to the next level of role-playing permissions? Master, the next level requires 2,000 role-playing points, and so on. That means level 4 requires 4,000, and level 5 requires 8,000. Hiss. Lin Feng took a breath. Oh my. That's not going to be easy, but on second thought, he accepted it. It was just a matter of playing more. He had also figured out a pattern. The bigger the scene, the better, the more role-playing points one would gain. For example, the last time he eliminated the Destroyer, his points only increased by a little over 900. But this time, Sun Wukong's points went straight up to 4,000. As for why Tathagata Buda's points were so few this time, Lin Feng figured it was because Tathagata Buda only appeared as an image, not a physical form, and he didn't say a single word the entire time. It was impossible to gain many role-playing points in this situation. After figuring it out, Lin Feng said, System, open them all. As soon as he finished speaking, a new virtual panel appeared before him, displaying a large selection of products. Zio Zhuangfen. 250 shock value, Sub-Beauty Patriarch. 100 million shock value, Zhu Beiji. 50,000 shock value, Shamunk. 40,000 shock value. The items were arranged in a rather chaotic order, seemingly not based on strength, shock value, or price. It felt a bit random. But Lin Feng didn't pay much attention. He said, System, search for Erlang Shen Yang Jian's character card. Okay, Master. With that, Yang Jian's character card appeared in the mall. He wielded a three-pointed, double-edged sword, clad in silver-white armor, and had 3 eyes. Far from looking strange, he was handsome, his gaze deep and resolute. At the same time, a sense of handsomeness and dominance washed over him. What a handsome image, Lin Feng smiled. He then glanced at the shock value displayed below. The shock value required was 150,000. I currently have 170,000 shock value, more than enough to buy this, Lin Feng said with a smile. At this moment, the system voice sounded again. Ling. Master, after the system upgrade, random tasks will be issued. The first random task is now being issued. Random task, play a Zerlang Shen, be dug up from the moon, shock the world, and then descend into the world. Complete random tasks turn a large amount of role-playing points. Chapter 53, hotly discussed online, calling out to Lin Feng. Chapter 53, hot online discussion, shouting out to Lin Feng, 2024-08-19 author, Good Monster. Chapter 53, hot online discussion, shouting out to Lin Feng. Completing random tasks can earn you a large amount of role-playing points. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Would that mean I could upgrade my role-playing privileges even faster? Lin Feng became excited. Immediately, he began to think about how to get people to dig Yangjian out of the moon. This won't be an easy task. First, I have to let people know that the moon is not a simple place, Lin Feng pondered. Meanwhile, the internet was abuzz with news of Xiangjiang City being invaded by aliens. Although the situation was horrific, akin to hell on earth, some people still risked their lives to secretly film the scene. Once these videos were released, they quickly became a sensation across the internet. No other news outlet could compare. Penguin News, Fox News, China Daily, Today's Headlines, Weibo, and other major news platforms were all covering the incident. Short video platforms like Douyin and Kuaishou also have numerous live streams of the incident. You don't even need to search. Just open any short video app or news app and you'll find a news feed about this incident. Because this is such a hot topic right now, anything related to this incident will garner tons of clicks and attention. Countless netizens from other parts of the world were surprised and shocked after seeing the video, unable to believe it was real. They had no idea about the battle before it happened, only finding out about it online through news like this. An alien army invaded Earth, and a phantom named Tathagata Buda appeared and single-handedly delayed the invasion. He then summoned Sun Wukong for help, and Sun Wukong then battled the alien army, using his clone technique to crush them. Finally, the phantom Tathagata Buda intervened and revived all the citizens of Xiangjiang City who had been killed by the alien army. While shocking at first, it wasn't that hard to accept. The final resurrection was truly incredible. What the hell? What happened to this world? Is this still the world I have lived in for more than 20 years? Incredible. Too incredible. Don't believe in rumors. Don't spread rumors. This thing must be false. Rumors stop at the wise. Another wise man has come out. Everyone laugh at him. Ha ha ha. What kind of idiot is this? Isn't he asking for trouble? It's this time, and he still says such things. That's right. If you don't believe it, go to Xiangjiang City and see for yourself. I am from Xiangjiang City. My home is gone and turned into ruins, hiss. Then this thing is true. Fuck, I care more about the last words of Tathagata Buddha. Maybe in the future it will be glorious again. Doesn't this mean that the magnificent scenes of ancient times will reappear? If the characters of ancient times wake up one after another, then this kind of thing is really possible. Fuck, I remember that at the lecture held by Professor Feng Min of Wukong University, a man named Lin Feng also said this. What Lin Feng? You should call him Professor Lin. He has been hired by Wukong University now. What? Professor Lin said, in the future, figures from ancient times will awaken one after another, but he didn't say, perhaps in the future, they will regain their former glory. Exactly, Professor Lin, please come out. What do you think of this? I heard Professor Lin is currently compiling the story of Sun Wukong and will give a lecture to detail his story, ? Is that true? Fuck, this is too good to be true. When is it? I have to be there this time. I was stuck on the highway last time. Damn it, what about the Tathagata Buddha? Fuck, isn't anyone paying attention to what's happening in New York City? It's been destroyed by aliens too. The internet was abuzz with discussion. All sorts of opinions were circulating. However, many people were excited when they learned that Lin Feng was going to give a lecture detailing Sun Wukong, saying they had to be there. Many also called for Lin Feng to come out and share his thoughts on this statement. United States. Tony Stark stared at the projected video in shock. The scene showed the Tathagata Buddha resurrecting all the dead, including wounds healed and broken arms and legs regrown. Tony gasped, his heart awash with shock. He finally understood why he had, despite severe palladium poisoning and hanging by a thread, woke up as if nothing had happened. It was the Tathagata Buddha's methods that saved him. Such a method is simply unbelievable and incomprehensible, Tony pondered. He weighed the situation. After a few seconds, he made a decision. Professor Feng, why are you here? Please take a seat, Lin Feng said hurriedly upon seeing Feng Min approaching, then stood up to make tea. Feng Min sat down and smiled at Lin Feng's back. Professor Lin, don't bother. I'll just sit for a while and leave, haha. Lin Feng smiled, continuing to make tea. Feng Min hadn't mentioned the Ministry of State Security's investigation of Lin Feng. To him, it was a minor matter, as long as Professor Lin Feng didn't endanger the safety of the country and the people, it was fine. Lin Feng brewed some tea and brought it over. Feng Min took the teacup, set it aside, and asked with a smile, Professor Lin, how is the story of Sun Wukong coming along? The story of Xiangjiang City being invaded by aliens and then resolved by the shadowy image of Sun Wukong, the Tathagata Buddha, has garnered enormous attention and excitement. The students at school are spreading the word, and they've also heard you're giving a lecture detailing Sun Wukong's story, and they're eagerly anticipating it. After all, Sun Wukong has done such a big thing this time, it's ready. The lecture will be held in a couple of days, Lin Feng said. That's great, Feng Min said. After the events in Xiangjiang City, he was even more curious about Sun Wukong's story. Moreover, Sun Wukong held a special place in his heart. He was the first to speak out about Sun Wukong's connection to Chinese history, a figure who had vanished from the pages of Chinese history. Feng Min smiled and added, Professor Lin, actually, I have a humble request. Hearing this, Lin Feng, looking at this history-obsessed old man, felt a sense of confusion. In his mind, Professor Feng was the kind of person who wouldn't hide personal matters about work, so why would he bring this up now? However, Lin Feng didn't care. He smiled and asked, Professor Feng, feel free to talk, okay? Professor Feng nodded repeatedly. After Professor Lin finishes his lecture, could you please give your notes to the school so the students can see them? Why? I just wrote them casually, it's just a manuscript. This is a detailed story about a monkey king. It's the first known record of him in the world. So it's priceless and will be passed down through the ages. I just want to preserve it. Lin Feng was a little surprised. He hadn't expected something he'd casually written to reach such a high level. But then he thought about the current situation and understood. So, he agreed. Chapter 54 Loki comes to visit Lin Feng again. Chapter 54 Loki comes to visit Lin Feng again. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 54 Loki comes to visit Lin Feng again. Professor Feng was as excited as a 60-year-old child. He drank up the tea that Lin Feng had brewed and left happily. Lin Feng shook his head and smiled. Meanwhile, on Chen Haitian's side, you two said you wanted to join the extraordinary organization of the Chinese Ministry of National Security. Chen Haitian frowned, looking at the two people sitting opposite him with a puzzled look. Yet, the two said at the same time, their eyes firm. They were Tony and Thor. Chen Haitian thought for a moment, then looked at Thor and said, Aren't you a prince of Asgard? Why don't you return to Asgard and want to join our organization of superhumans? He then looked at Tony Stark and said, And you, an American, a prominent figure in the US, the owner of Stark Industries, what are you after? Chen Haitian didn't understand what the two men were planning. Because we want to meet people like Sun Wukong and understand the power they wield, they said in unison. They had overheard Chen Haitian's conversation with Sun Wukong and knew that Chen Haitian wanted to form a superhuman organization, so after careful consideration, they decided to join. Chen Haitian understood what they were saying and sympathized with their thinking. The power wielded by Sun Wukong and his group was truly mysterious and powerful, and it was natural to yearn for it. Moreover, not only did they yearn for it, but he himself also yearned for it. Chen Haitian added, But Sun Wukong seems to have rejected my invitation, and judging by his expression, he seems to have some resistance to being an official. As Chen Haitian spoke, he recalled the situation. He was curious about the situation, wondering why Sun Wukong had acted this way. So, I'm not sure if people like them will ultimately agree to join this organization of transcendence. You two should think carefully about this, Chen Haitian added. His meaning was clear, there was a chance your attempts to connect might be thwarted. If you wanted to join, you should be mentally prepared. Well, we understand, Thor and Tony said. They had also heard that Sun Wukong seemed reluctant, so they were aware of the situation. On the other hand, if they didn't join the Huaxia organization, They would have no chance of meeting someone like Sun Wukong. Joining the organization at least offered a chance. Okay, seeing their resolute stance, Chen Haitian understood their intentions. Without further ado, he agreed. Besides, it was a good thing. Thor was a prince of Asgard and possessed the power of thunder. Tony owns Stark Industries and controls the manufacturing process for the Iron Man suit. These two are perfect for this organization of superhumans. This time, they're definitely benefiting from Sun Wukong and the others. Otherwise, they wouldn't even want to join this organization. But I still hope Sun Wukong will eventually join, Chen Haitian thought to himself. Meanwhile, at Lin Feng's place, Loki came knocking again. Scholar Lin. Scholar Lin, Loki called from outside. He was dressed in a casual suit, a stark contrast to his previous attire in Xiangjiang City. Lin Feng came out. Seeing Loki, he frowned slightly and said, "You again?" Loki, looking panicked, said, "Scholar Lin, your information is wrong." Loki had been having a rough time these past few days. He didn't dare stay on Earth, fearing Sun Wukong's capture and retaliation. So, he used the power of the Tesseract to escape to another planet and hide for a few days. Only today did he use the Tesseract to return to Earth to find Lin Feng. Lin Feng was lost in thought. He had originally thought Loki was looking for trouble. After all, he'd fooled him back then. But judging by his reaction and attitude, it didn't seem like he was seeking revenge, but simply seeking to tell him the information was wrong. Lin Feng thought for a moment. If that was the case, he'd just keep teasing him. Lin Feng pretended not to know what Loki was talking about and asked, "Information? What information?" "On Sun Wukong," Loki said. "Didn't you say before that Sun Wukong wasn't actually very strong, that he was okay fighting alone but would be defeated if besieged? But he stood firm against the alien army and was incredibly strong." Upon hearing this, Lin Feng instantly knew how to respond. "So that's what happened," he said. "My previous research was wrong, and I only discovered it later. Sun Wukong is actually quite formidable even when besieged. I was planning to contact you to explain this, but I don't seem to have your contact information." Upon hearing this, Loki thought to himself, exactly as I suspected. Loki had previously suspected Lin Feng of deliberately deceiving him. But then he thought, that's impossible. Lin Feng didn't know his own identity, so there was no reason for him to lie to himself. So, he later thought that Lin Feng must have made a wrong conclusion because of his research results. However, he was not angry because mistakes were inevitable in academic research. It was just that he was a little unwilling to accept it. A good plan was ruined by Sun Wukong again. Lin Feng said again, "But, isn't it a good thing that Sun Wukong is so powerful? It prevented the Earth from being invaded by aliens, and killed the alien invaders without leaving a single piece of armor." Loki was stunned by this question and was stunned on the spot. He couldn't say that he was the invading alien, right? So, he could only force a smile and said, "Yes, this is indeed a good thing." Seeing Loki's fake smile and admitting that he was killed without leaving a single piece of armor, Lin Feng couldn't stop laughing in his heart. He added, "However, Sun Wukong's strength has its limits. He's not invincible." Loki's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and he quickly asked, "Professor Lin, what do you mean?" "I don't know the specifics yet. But my research has revealed that Sun Wukong was later defeated and imprisoned." Loki's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had previously thought Sun Wukong was incredibly powerful, and his plans to defeat him and take over Earth seemed hopeless. But after hearing Lin Feng's words, he suddenly felt confident again. "Professor Lin, are you sure this time? Are your research results correct?" Loki asked, hoping to prevent a recurrence. "Yes, I'm sure this time," Lin Feng said, "but I haven't figured out how he was imprisoned." "Okay, I get it," Loki said excitedly. It didn't matter how he was imprisoned, as long as he could be imprisoned. This proved that he wasn't invincible. "Hey, why do you seem so excited to hear that Sun Wukong is not invincible?" "Really?" Loki was startled, but quickly reacted and said, "Haha, maybe it's because I was chatting with Professor Lin and got the information about Sun Wukong first. So I'm excited." "Oh, so that's how it is." Lin Feng nodded deliberately. Loki smiled again and thought to himself, what a close call, worthy of being a great scholar. His observation is so sharp that I almost discovered the clues. But suddenly, he thought of something else and said, "You speculated before that other characters would awaken next. The shadow of Tathagata Buddha also said so, which confirms what you said before. Do you know who will be the next character to awaken?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Loki wants to make trouble again. Lin Feng holds a lecture. Chapter 55 Loki is trying to stir up trouble again, and Lin Feng is holding a lecture. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 55 Loki is trying to stir up trouble again, and Lin Feng is holding a lecture. Upon hearing this, Lin Feng pretended to ponder and said, "The next one should be Yang Jian." Yang Jian. Loki thought the name seemed a bit unremarkable. He asked Lin Feng again, "Is he powerful?" Lin Feng shook his head. "Not powerful." Loki's heart skipped a beat. "No, I haven't started researching him yet." Loki was taken aback. But then Lin Feng added, "However, based on my recent research, I found that these ancient figures aren't very powerful when they first awaken." Lin Feng's words weren't fooling Loki. The character he had just assumed only had level 1 access, and could only unleash 10% of their power. Loki was taken aback by this. Immediately, he hurriedly recalled something. This careful recollection actually brought back a key point. That was when he first met Sun Wukong. He felt he was weaker than the second time. The first time, Sun Wukong seemed to only be able to attack with his iron rod. Thinking of this, he gasped, his expression horrified. He had received incredible news. Loki was filled with excitement and said to Lin Feng, "Thank you, Mr. Lin, for sharing this." "You're welcome." Seeing Loki's excitement, Lin Feng knew he had been tricked again, and he chuckled to himself. He added, "My research is meant to bring these ancient figures and events to light." "Yes," Loki nodded heavily. These words deeply moved him. This was the true nature of a great scholar, selflessly contributing his knowledge. Loki added, "Don't worry, Mr. Lin. I'll have a generous gift for you in a while." "What do you mean?" "Haha, you'll know later." Loki smiled. "I have something else to do, so I'll take my leave now." Loki stood up and hurried away. Lin Feng stared at Loki's back, lost in thought. Loki left the garden. After hearing Lin Feng's words, he once again considered killing Sun Wukong and conquering Earth. The situation was that Tathagata Buda had fallen asleep again, and Sun Wukong wasn't invincible. And with Yang Jian about to awaken, he wouldn't be too strong, so Earth was still attackable. And the generous gift he just offered Lin Feng was a way to repay him by imparting this information. Lin is truly a great man, Loki exclaimed. He'd been here twice, and both times, he'd generously shared his knowledge with him. Seeing no one was around, Loki took out the Tesseract and left. Asgard's library. Pitch black. Using the Tesseract's power, Loki arrived and groped for books in the darkness. Dwarfs, Knights of Light, Ether Energy, the Doomsday of the Nine Kingdoms. Loki anxiously flipped through the books, eager to find a new supporter. Because, for now, there's only one Sun Wukong on Earth. Even if this Yang Jian awakens, he's still relatively new and not very powerful, making him easy to deal with. Furthermore, there's Thanos, who won't tolerate failure. But not only did he fail, he also sacrificed the notorious Chitauri army, which had conquered the galaxy. He also possesses the Mind Scepter and the Tesseract, so you can imagine how desperately Thanos wants to find him. And if Thanos finds him, how dire will his fate be? Dark Elves. At this moment, Loki's heart trembled. He had discovered a record about the Dark Elves. Loki was different from Thor. Loki loved reading, which was why he had devoted himself to studying witchcraft with his mother. His extensive reading enriched his knowledge. He knew the Dark Elves. They were a powerful race, fearless of life and death. In Asgard's heyday, it took a tremendous effort to defeat the Dark Elves' army. But this defeat was only due to some degree of trickery. When the Nine Kingdoms align, the Dark Elves might awaken. Isn't it the time? Loki was shocked. A 9-planet alignment would occur soon, meaning the Nine Kingdoms would align. But could such a phenomenon actually awaken the Dark Elves? Loki hadn't expected this. But his heart was racing. He wanted to use this race of Dark Elves. However, they were too evil. Would they become uncontrollable? Loki hesitated. But then he thought, the situation was dire, and there was no other way. Thanos was definitely looking for him. If he was found, it would be the end. And back on Earth, Sun Wukong must die, repeatedly undermining his grand plans. This was intolerable. After much hesitation, Loki gritted his teeth, made up his mind, and decided to do it. But I should think about how to make the Dark Elves obey me, Loki pondered. Earth. The heat of the alien attack on Xiangjiang City continued. Meanwhile, Wukong University officials released a Weibo post announcing a new lecture scheduled for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Professor Lin Feng would be in attendance, detailing the story of Sun Wukong. This post instantly caused a sensation. Major news platforms rushed to report on the story, and short video platforms also began to post the news. As always, stories about ancient times are incredibly popular these days, drawing significant attention in a matter of minutes. Netizens were abuzz with discussion. Holy crap, is this true or false? Nonsense, it must be true. It's released by Wukong's official website, how could it be false? Awesome. I'm so curious about the details of Sun Wukong, me too. Especially this time, Sun Wukong destroyed the alien army that invaded the Earth, and I'm even more curious about him. Ha ha ha, we all think the same thing. I'm going to buy a ticket to Beijing right now. I want to listen to it live. I've already bought the ticket. Fuck, there are no more tickets. Ha ha ha, I heard the news a long time ago, so I came to Beijing 3 days ago. Last time I was stuck in traffic on the highway, this time, I must see the live lecture. 6666, brother is still so cool. I have to go to work, so I can only watch the live broadcast. Holy crap. Gentlemen, calm down. Beijing is such a small place. It can't handle so many of you coming, that makes sense. Then quickly send Professor Lin to our Zhejiang. Our Zhejiang has convenient transportation in a large area that can accommodate so many people. Zhangxi, oh? Is Zhejiang a big area? Ha 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 ha. I wonder if Professor Lin knows about the Tathagata Buddha. I'm curious about him too. Yeah, I was looking for that comment. I'm curious about him, too. What a shame we can't be there. Guys, if any of you are there, please ask Professor Lin if he can tell us about the Tathagata Buddha. Ha ha ha, sure, discussions raged. Within a short time, it dominated the trending search charts on all major platforms. Netizens were filled with anticipation and excitement for the lecture. Soon, the second day arrived. The lecture began as scheduled. Chapter 56 Lin Feng's Influence. Chapter 56, Lin Feng's Influence, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 56, Lin Feng's Influence. Wukong University. Auditorium. It was still half an hour before 10 o'clock, but the audience had already begun to arrive. There were Wukong teachers, professors, and students, as well as members of the public, and even quite a few celebrities, entrepreneurs, and so on. Everyone took their seats, and soon the atmosphere became lively. It's finally starting, damn. I almost got late. Last time I got stuck on the highway, and this time I got stuck on the North 4th Ring Road. There were so many people, ha ha ha. Beijing is always jammed with traffic, and now that Professor Lin is giving a lecture, it's even worse. Luckily I had the foresight to come to Wukong University and wait at 2 a.m. Ha ha ha, I didn't see it last time, but this time I can finally see it. I wonder if I can ask Professor Lin for an autograph. Shit. Don't use those fan circle tactics on Professor Lin, okay? That's right. Professor Lin is a scholar, he doesn't do that. I wonder if Professor Lin will talk about the Tathagata Buddha? I don't know. What time is it? What time is it? It's 9:50, and it starts in 10 minutes. Ha ha ha, so exciting. I wonder what Professor Lin will say about Sun Wukong. Yet, I'm excited too. The discussion continued. Lin Feng's good friend Tang Yiming was also there. His face was filled with excitement, waiting for his friend's lecture to begin. Tang Yiming was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses. He had never imagined that Lin Feng actually had some knowledge of Sun Wukong. He had always thought he was just bragging. Their historical knowledge was almost identical, but Lin Feng's covert research on Sun Wukong had truly astonished and surprised him. Chen Haitian had also arrived, along with Thor and Tony. They certainly wouldn't miss this lecture on Sun Wukong. Soon, 10 o'clock arrived. The livestream equipment was activated at the same moment. In the livestream room, many people were already waiting. The moment the livestream began, netizens erupted in excitement. Here it comes. There's footage. Ha ha ha, it must have been hard to wait. Yeah, where's Professor Lin? Where's Professor Lin? Fuck, I really envy those who are there. Yeah, it's a pity I have to go to work, otherwise I would have been there too. It's useless. I'm at Wukong University right now, but I can't get in at all. There are too many people. I can only watch the live broadcast outside. Huh? I wonder if the guy who was stuck on the highway managed to get to the scene this time. Ha. Professor Feng Min walked up to the podium, his face full of excitement and a smile, and said, "Everyone, welcome to the lecture at Wukong University. I am Feng Min, a professor in the history department of Wukong University." Feng Min paused, then smiled and said, "Last time, I told you about the basic situation of Sun Wukong. Everyone should be familiar with Sun Wukong. If it weren't for him in the Xiangjiang city incident, our Earth might have been in the war of invasion by alien civilization. So, I believe that after this incident, everyone must be more curious about Sun Wukong." Feng Min smiled and added, "This time, our newly hired Professor Lin Feng will present the detailed story of Sun Wukong. Let's welcome Professor Lin." Feng Min led the applause. Principal Zhao Songyang and the other veteran professors also enthusiastically applauded. Suddenly, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Amidst the applause, a young, slender figure walked onto the podium. It was Lin Feng. Everyone was familiar with Lin Feng's appearance, as the video of his speech at Feng Min's last lecture had already gone viral. Those who were following the event had seen the video and knew what he looked like. Furthermore, most of the audience had been there before. Lin Feng took the podium. Professor Feng Min nodded and smiled, then left. But once the applause died down, many began shouting questions at Lin Feng. This instantly triggered a chain reaction, and the audience erupted in a clamor. In short, the atmosphere was far more enthusiastic than at Feng Min's previous lectures. But the security guards were troubled by the situation. With so much noise, how could it continue? And since it was a live broadcast, if it continued like this, someone might get so excited that they rushed the stage, which would be troublesome. So, the security guards, with megaphones, began to enforce order. "Quiet. Everyone, please be quiet. Stop it. Stop it." The lecture needs silence, but no matter what they said, it had no effect. The noise continued. Principals Zhao Songyang and Feng Min were also surprised to see this. They hadn't expected this. This was too much? No, we have to stop it now. We can't let them continue, or the lecture won't go on. But just as they were about to step onto the stage to intervene, Lin Feng reached out and pressed down. Then, the audience instantly fell silent. Zhao Songyang and Feng Min were stunned by this scene. Then, they realized. This was Lin Feng's current influence. "I've been teaching all my life, and this is the first time I've seen anything like this," Feng Min exclaimed in amazement. "Me too," Zhao Songyang nodded. They could understand the situation. Now everyone wanted to know about Sun Wukong, so naturally the focus was on Lin Feng. If he asked everyone to be quiet, then everyone would naturally quiet down. After the audience quieted down, Lin Feng smiled and said to the microphone, "Everyone, don't get excited. If you have any questions, you can ask them later. You are so noisy that I can't go on." As soon as these words came out, everyone's heart tightened, worried that Professor Lin would stop talking. However, Lin Feng smiled again and said, "So, I hope everyone can keep quiet while I tell you the story of Sun Wukong." "Thank you everyone," Lin Feng finished speaking. The audience was still silent. However, they breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Professor Lin was not angry. "Very good." Seeing this, Lin Feng smiled and nodded, saying, "Then I'll begin. The story will be a bit long, so please listen patiently." Professor Feng mentioned earlier that Sun Wukong was born in Flower Fruit Mountain. The details are that Sun Wukong was conceived from a piece of stone left behind by a powerful woman who refined stones to repair the sky. He embodies the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the essence of the sun and moon. Lin Feng began his story. The audience remained silent, but they were deeply shocked, stunned by Lin Feng's opening story. Holy crap! Repairing the sky? What does that even mean? That sounds amazing. And who is this woman? Everyone was filled with curiosity and astonishment, but they held back, refraining from asking questions for fear of interrupting Professor Lin's explanation. Lin Feng began by describing Sun Wukong's birth and his journey to sea to learn from a master. Under his master's careful guidance, Sun Wukong learned the art of immortality, the 72 transformations, and the somersault cloud. Chapter 57 The story of Sun Wukong making trouble in heaven. Chapter 57, The Story of Sun Wukong's Havoc in Heaven, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 57, The Story of Sun Wukong's Havoc in Heaven. The art of immortality, as the name suggests, is the ability to achieve immortality. And the 72 transformations refer to 72 abilities. Professor Feng has mentioned the somersault cloud before. With a single somersault, Sun Wukong can travel a great distance. Hiss. Everyone gasped. Professor Feng had spoken about Sun Wukong before, but not in the detail that Professor Lin had. Now that everyone knew the purpose of these abilities, they were astonished. The art of immortality, holy crap, is this true? 72 transformations, our 72 abilities? Then why haven't we seen Sun Wukong use them? Does creating clones count? But that's just one, there are others. Everyone had questions in their minds. But they tacitly kept silent, listening intently to Lin Feng's explanation. Sun Wukong returned from his studies. Flower Fruit Mountain was attacked by hunters, resulting in numerous casualties among the monkeys. Sun Wukong then attacked and defeated the hunter group. Later, Sun Wukong felt he needed a suitable weapon and traveled to the Dragon Palace in the East China Sea. The Dragon King of the East China Sea offered several weapons, but Sun Wukong found none of them suitable. The Dragon King then explained that there was a piece of divine iron needle, useless in the Dragon Palace. If you could lift it, then take it. Sun Wukong picked up the divine iron needle and discovered it was a treasure. This divine iron needle was the golden cudgel. Professor Feng Min had previously described the golden cudgel, and the information I had discovered was essentially the same. However, the golden cudgel could grow or shrink at Sun Wukong's will. Hearing this, everyone was once again astonished. Holy crap, that iron rod has such a function, amazing, but why haven't we seen Sun Wukong use this ability? Everyone still had questions in their minds, but they remained silent, still not interrupting Lin Feng's explanation. After Sun Wukong obtained the golden cudgel, he found it very handy and was delighted. However, when the Dragon King of the East Sea discovered that the magic iron needle was actually a treasure that could increase or decrease in size, he regretted giving it to Sun Wukong. However, he knew that the people in the Dragon Palace could not deal with Sun Wukong, so he gave up and let Sun Wukong take it and leave. Not long after, the soul collector from the underworld arrived and took away Sun Wukong's soul. The soul is the most important thing in a person. Without the soul, one is dead. The underworld is the place where souls are taken away. However, I have not yet begun to research the details of the underworld. Lin Feng was now discussing Sun Wukong's life. If he mixed all these miscellaneous things together, there would be too much to explain, and it would be confusing and daunting for the audience. So he briefly mentioned the situation in the underworld. But when the audience heard this, their hearts tightened, realizing that danger was approaching. Sun Wukong's soul had been taken away. The soul-collecting messenger brought Sun Wukong's soul to the underworld for a verdict. The judge declared that Sun Wukong's lifespan had ended, Lin Feng announced. But the audience was stunned upon hearing this. That couldn't be right. Sun Wukong's lifespan had ended? Hadn't he previously learned the art of immortality? Online viewers were also reacting with comments expressing their disbelief. Holy shit, this isn't right. It's absolutely wrong. Yes. Did Sun Wukong learn the art of immortality? There's something fishy. There's definitely something fishy. That's right. The underworld must have made a mistake. Comments were flooding in, while arguing with this. No one thought Professor Lin's research was wrong. It was simple. For Sun Wukong to survive until now, he must have learned the art of immortality. Therefore, in this case, the underworld was most likely mistaken. Lin Feng, seemingly aware of everyone's confusion, paused to explain. I know everyone's wondering about this. Let me share my opinion. I think either Sun Wukong's master didn't teach him the conventional immortality technique, which isn't recognized by the underworld, or the underworld made a mistake. Everyone nodded in agreement. Lin Feng continued, when Sun Wukong heard this, he argued with the other party, claiming he had mastered the immortality technique. But the other party was unreasonable and insisted that Sun Wukong's lifespan had ended and he was dead. How could Sun Wukong tolerate this? He immediately overturned the underworld, destroyed the Book of Life and Death, and returned to life. Everyone was thrilled and delighted at this. Ha ha ha, well done, great, awesome. That's how it should be. Someone who's mastered the immortality technique is actually trying to collect souls. Isn't that bullying? Everyone was excited, But no one spoke to interrupt Lin Feng's explanation. After Sun Wukong returned to life, the underworld and the Dragon Palace in the East China Sea jointly filed a complaint with the Heavenly Palace. One alleged that Sun Wukong had caused trouble in the underworld, the other that he had stolen their treasures. They asked the Lord of the Heavenly Palace to resolve the matter. Lin Feng paused, then said, I haven't figured out the identity of this Lord of the Heavenly Palace yet, so I'll just use that code name. All you need to know is that he's a very powerful figure. Lin Feng continued. The Lord of the Heavenly Palace originally wanted to send troops to capture Sun Wukong, but was stopped by a civil official. The official suggested recruiting him and giving him a minor official position. This way, they could restrain the enemy without using any troops. So, Sun Wukong was recruited, but only given a minor official position. Unaware of this, Sun Wukong worked diligently every day. Until one day, he learned of this and became enraged, feeling that the Heavenly Palace was humiliating him. So he returned to Flower Fruit Mountain and proclaimed himself the great sage equaling heaven. Everyone was shocked to hear this, feeling that the Heavenly Palace was indeed humiliating. However, I finally know how the title of the great sage equaling heaven came about. Later, when the Heavenly Palace learned of this, they were about to revolt again, but were stopped by the civil officials, who said it was just a title. He could give it to them if he wanted. A nominal position would keep him in check, and he would be content. So, they approached Sun Wukong again, proclaiming their approval of the title and offering him a high official position. Sun Wukong, still unaware of this, happily went to the Heavenly Palace to take up his post. Until one day, the Heavenly Palace held a grand event, but Sun Wukong was not invited. Upon learning of this, Sun Wukong was in disbelief. He, a high-ranking official, was not invited? So he stopped a man to inquire about the situation, and the man told him the truth. Furious, Sun Wukong caused a scene at the event and returned to Flower Fruit Mountain. This time, the Heavenly Palace Lord refused to offer him amnesty, but instead dispatched 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals against Sun Wukong. But they were powerless, and only then did a true lord, Yang Jian, finally capture him. This true lord was known as Erlang Xian Sheng's Henjin. Upon hearing this, everyone was stunned. It felt like a fabricated story. However, everyone had witnessed Sun Wukong's prowess. Everyone was stunned. But then, noticing that Lin Feng had stopped talking, they became curious. Go on, why aren't you continuing? Lin Feng tidied up his manuscript before speaking into the microphone. This is all I've discovered about Sun Wukong's story. The rest of the story hasn't been researched yet. The audience gasped in surprise at these words. Chapter 58 Audience Questions, Who is Tathagata Buddha? Chapter 58, Audience Questions, Who is Tathagata Buddha? 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 58, Audience Questions, Who is Tathagata Buddha? Immediately, everyone reacted, unable to sit still, shouting excitedly. Professor Lin, is that all? Tell me more. Yes. Tell me more. You've definitely figured out more than this, right? There must be more, even if it's unorganized. Tell me about it, Professor Lin. I can't get enough. I really want to know what happened to Sun Wukong. That's right. Tell me more, Professor Lin. Professor Lin. The audience was agitated, shouting for Lin Feng to explain more, and finally, they all chanted Lin Feng's name in unison, their voices resounding and unanimous. Principals Zhao Songyang and Fang Min saw this, their faces changed again. They were really worried that the audience would lose control of their emotions and run to the podium. Just then, Lin Feng reached out and held his hand down. The noise from the audience faded again, until it finally reached complete silence. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min took another breath, a bit surprised. But they were also relieved. Thankfully, Professor Lin was still able to control the situation. Seeing the audience's curiosity amplified, Lin Feng smiled. This was exactly what he wanted. He said, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm still researching the subsequent situation regarding Sun Wukong. I'll announce it once I've compiled it. Lin Feng smiled and quickly ended the topic, saying, if you have any questions about Sun Wukong, please feel free to ask. I'll share what I know. As soon as these words were spoken, the audience began to whisper among themselves. But with so many people in the audience, even whispers were loud. Oh, what a shame. I didn't get enough, yet. I really want to know what happened to Sun Wukong. Did he get killed? Speechless. Do you want to think about what you're saying? That's right. If some Wukong was killed, who took out the alien army in Xiangjiang City? You, ha ha ha, don't you have a brain? A cacophony of voices. Lin Feng's good friend Tang Yiming sat in the audience, excited and looking at Lin Feng with a touch of envy. The excitement was that learning so much about Sun Wukong was a thrill for him. As for envy, last time, everyone had sat together and watched, but this time, Lin Feng stood on the stage, explaining Sun Wukong's story, the center of attention. As a friend, it was impossible not to be envious. Chen Haitian looked surprised. After listening to Lin Feng's story, he finally understood why Sun Wukong resisted serving in an official position. So that's how it is, Chen Haitian muttered. Tony and Thor, on the other hand, looked shocked. Their focus was on Sun Wukong's cultivation skills and Lin Feng's account of his experiences. The East China Sea Dragon Palace, the soul-binding palace in the underworld, and the Heavenly Palace all filled them with immense curiosity and astonishment. That was truly a magical era, they both thought simultaneously. Tony, in particular, was still an Earthling. But, on Earth today, none of these places existed. Where had they gone? Tony frowned, puzzled. Inside the live stream, the audience also responded with comments. Fuck, it's already finished. I haven't even had enough. Who said it wasn't? I'm so curious about what happened to Sun Wukong later. Come on, don't be ungrateful. These stories we're hearing are the product of Professor Lin's painstaking research. Yes, it must be very difficult for Professor Lin to come up with so many things. Damn. Did Professor Lin say to ask questions? Why isn't anyone asking, who's here? Ask me why the Tathagata Buddha called Sun Wukong the Fighting Buddha. I'm curious, the comments continued. After some low whispers from the audience, someone finally stood up. Everyone was stunned when they saw this person. Damn, why is it him again? Is this grandson so fond of showing off? This person was none other than the students who stood up and asked questions at Professor Fang's lecture before, Suzhou. Suzhou looked at Lin Feng and said with a smile, Professor Lin, I wonder if you still remember me. I remember, Lin Feng said. You are the student who asked Professor Fang questions at the lecture held by Professor Fang before. Yes, then what questions do you have for me now? I want to ask, you said that the golden cudgel can grow bigger and smaller, right? But I have seen the video, that iron rod doesn't look like it can grow bigger or smaller, right? As soon as this was said, some people also realized the problem. Lin Feng smiled and explained, you're looking at things from that era through the eyes of modern people. Common sense doesn't apply to that era. Let me give you a simple example. A person couldn't possibly transform into a streak of light, right? But figures from that era could. Take, for example, the familiar Sun Wukong. So, from this perspective, his golden cudgel can grow and shrink. What's so strange about it? Suzhou took a breath. Lin Feng's analogy with people made him feel suddenly enlightened. He understood. So that's how it is. He sat down. Everyone else agreed, hearing this, felt it made sense. That era was inherently magical. A rod possessing the ability to grow and shrink wasn't surprising. Thor, however, was most deeply moved by this. His hammer was truly magical. Not only could it summon lightning, but it would come to him whenever he thought of it. But suddenly, Thor realized something and quickly stopped thinking about it. If he intended the hammer to come, and it flew over, it would undoubtedly damage the surrounding buildings and disrupt a lecture. At this moment, another person stood up. And he was a monk. He said, Professor Lin, I am the abbot of Jingguang Temple, my Dharma name is Huzi. I would like to ask you, who is the Tathagata Buddha who appeared in Xiangjiang City? Huzi looked puzzled and bewildered. Everyone was stunned to see the monk. They had the impression that these people seemed pure and unconcerned, not interested in joining in the fun. Why were they attending a lecture now? As mentioned before, although myths and legends have disappeared from this world, religions like Taoism and Buddhism still exist. It's just that they don't know which figure to worship. When Lin Feng first appeared as the Tathagata Buddha, the unknown statue enshrined in their temple shattered. This startled them, and they also had a premonition. Later, when they saw the video of the Tathagata Buddha from Xiangjiang City, they were completely shocked. They felt as if they had some connection to the Tathagata Buddha, but they couldn't put their finger on it. This made them desperate to find out who the Tathagata Buddha was. Hearing this, Lin Feng looked at Huzi. He had anticipated this situation. The appearance of the Tathagata Buddha inevitably piqued the curiosity of Buddhist monks, who would want to know who he was. I'm not sure why Taoism and Buddhism still exist in a world without myths and legends, but that's unimportant. Since they don't know who they should worship, I'll tell them who they should worship and restore true Taoism and Buddhism." Lin Feng smiled inwardly. He said, "I haven't researched the specifics of the Tathagata Buddha. However, I am certain of one thing, he is the Buddha, and that is what you monks believe in. You Buddhists should create a golden statue of him and worship him, rather than worshipping unknown objects." Chapter 59. The abbot is grateful to Lin Feng. You have a connection with Buddha. Chapter 59. The abbot is grateful to Lin Feng. You have a connection with Buddha. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 59. The abbot is grateful to Lin Feng. You have a connection with Buddha. When these words came out, everyone in the room was shocked. Tathagata Buddha is actually a Buddhist belief? This is too sudden, right? However, if you think about it carefully, he does seem to have a connection with Buddhism. First of all, he is a bald head. Secondly, there is Buddha in his name. And there is also a word ancestor. This word is not ordinary. Not everyone can be called ancestor. He trembled all over, and his confused eyes gradually brightened, as if he understood something. Finally, his expression was slightly excited, and he put his hands together, and couldn't help but say, "Amitabha." These 4 words were recited when the shadow of Tathagata Buddha appeared, and before that, this sentence did not exist in this world. He said gratefully, "Thank you, Benefactor Lin, for showing me the way forward in Buddhism. It turns out that for thousands of years, Buddhism has been on the wrong track. I'm so ashamed. If it weren't for Benefactor Lin, I don't know how long Buddhism would have strayed." He felt ashamed. Then, he added, "Benefactor Lin, I have a connection with Buddhism. Please visit me again someday." Amitabha. With that, he hurriedly left his seat and walked away, his pace rather briskly, without looking back. He wanted to quickly inform all Buddhist temples of this situation, rectify the situation, and put an end to centuries of wrongdoing. But Lin Feng, hearing this, wondered, what does this monk mean? Is he trying to convert me to Buddhism? Any monk who says you have a connection with Buddhism is likely to do so. Everyone was stunned, wondering, we'd finally made it to this lecture, and now we're so anxious to leave before it's over? Would that be a loss? What if there were more secrets to come? But then, on second thought, they understood his feelings. Buddhism had been wrong for thousands of years. Now, thanks to Professor Lin's enlightenment, people have realized that the Tathagata Buddha is the true Buddhist faith. Wouldn't they be thrilled to tell all Buddhist temples in the world about this? Anyone would be just as excited. As the lecture was in full swing, no one realized that a once-in-a-millennium wonder was slowly taking shape. When this wonder occurred, the universe's spacetime would gradually overlap, potentially opening a spacetime corridor between the 9 kingdoms. This corridor would be the gateway to the dark matter realm. No one on Earth realized this, but Loki was well aware of the reality. He harnessed the power of the Tesseract to reach Vat-Alheim, the former home of the Dark Elves. However, the area was now completely desolate, with dust drifting like a yellow mist in all directions, devoid of any sign of greenery or life. Loki said solemnly, although the records show the Dark Elves were annihilated, the body of their leader, Malekith, was never found. I suspect he fled, but I can't be sure. If I can find him, then the rest will be easier. Loki, clutching the cosmic cube, attempted to track Malekith's whereabouts by searching for traces left by the wormhole's creation. This was his 15th time standing on the surface of Vat-Alheim, searching for any trace of Malekith at the side of the battle. How could I not find him? Was Malekith truly defeated? Leaving no trace, Loki frowned, reluctantly pacing forward. He walked for an unknown amount of time. Suddenly, he stopped and looked ahead. From the void ahead, a faint aura of darkness emanated. Loki's lips curled up, and he exclaimed, "Found it! Earth, prepare for my counterattack." After he left, the lecture resumed. Several more people stood up to ask questions, and Lin Feng answered them one by one. Then, another person stood up and asked, "Professor Lin, I have a question. Excuse me, you said Sun Wukong's title is the Great Sage equaling Heaven, so why does Tathagata Buddha also call him Fighting and Victory Buddha?" This question piqued the curiosity of many. But none of them said anything, quietly awaiting Professor Lin's answer. In the livestream, many netizens excitedly responded with comments. "Wow, someone finally asked this question, yeah, ha ha ha. I've always been curious about this." Lin Feng smiled and said, "I don't know the answer yet. However, I think Sun Wukong must have done something later to earn him this title. Everyone was disappointed after hearing the first part. But then they heard the second part. Thinking about it carefully, it was possible. But what did Sun Wukong do? Everyone's curiosity was piqued again. The student pondered for a moment and agreed that it made sense. Then, he looked at Lin Feng and asked, then Sun Wukong will be called Fighting and Victory Buddha. Does this mean he will become a Buddhist in the future? This student had just realized that Tathagata Buddha's name contained the character Buddha, and now, Sun Wukong's title also contained the character Buddha. Upon hearing this, everyone realized this and looked at Lin Feng curiously. Lin Feng nodded and said, yes, judging by this title, Sun Wukong will indeed eventually become a Buddhist. Everyone gasped. This was a bit surprising. How did he suddenly become a Buddhist? What exactly did he do later? Everyone became more curious and wanted to know more. Lin Feng smiled and added, however, for now, there is another question. According to the information I've researched, Sun Wukong is usually called Great Sage or Sun Dashan, not by his name. At this remark, everyone was stunned. They hadn't thought it was a big deal before. But now, after Lin Feng's words, they began to feel that calling him by his name did seem disrespectful to Sun Wukong. He has saved mankind twice in a row. Damn. Now that you put it that way, it does feel a bit disrespectful to Sun Wukong. Yeah, I didn't feel that way before. In fact, I felt it a long time ago, but I didn't know what to call him. I thought about calling him Ancestor. After all, he was a person from ancient times, but it feels so awkward and weird. But now Professor Lin said to call him the Great Sage. I inexplicably feel that it seems very appropriate. Fuck, I have the same feeling. I feel that Sun Wukong should be called the Great Sage. Yes, yes, yes. I have the same feeling. The live broadcast room was filled with barrages, and they were all barrages with such content. Lin Feng saw the reaction of the audience below and a smile appeared on his face. He had discovered this situation before and thought about explaining this matter in the lecture so that everyone would know how to call Sun Wukong. Next, some people asked questions, but Lin Feng answered them one by one. Finally, no one stood up to ask questions. Lin Feng glanced around and said, doesn't everyone have any questions? Seeing this, everyone thought that Professor Lin would announce that this lecture was over and see you next time. However, who would have thought that Professor Lin would say, if no one has any more questions, then I will tell you about a secret I discovered during my research during this period. As soon as these words came out, the whole room was shocked and curious, and there was an uproar. Chapter 60. The lecture ended and everyone was shocked. Chapter 60. The lecture ended, and everyone was shocked. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 60. The lecture ended, and everyone was shocked. Everyone was extremely curious and excited. Oh my god, there's a secret. Ha ha ha. I was saying Professor Lin might have figured out something else. Stop bragging, you hindsight. How could I be bragging? Look, Professor Lin studied Sun Wukong, so it's only natural that he would figure out something else based on his research, right? It's like spider silk, it always involves other things. Yeah, you have a point. But didn't Professor Lin say that Sun Wukong should be called the Great Sage? Why are you still calling him Sun Wukong? You're so disrespectful. Ha ha ha. What secret is Professor Lin? Yeah, tell me. There was an uproar. Some people whispered to each other, expressing their opinions. Some fanatical and bold people loudly asked Lin Feng what the secret was. The netizens in the live broadcast room also became curious and excited. Even Principal Zhao Songyang and the others were piqued with curiosity and surprise. They hadn't heard of this before. What secret had Professor Lin uncovered? Wasn't he keeping it a secret? Only now revealing it? Lin Feng smiled at the audience's reaction. This was exactly the effect he'd been aiming for. When the system issued the random task to unearth Yang Jian from the moon, he'd conceived an idea. Now, he was ready to put it into action. Lin Feng reached down, signaling for everyone to be quiet and calm. Once the audience quieted down, Lin Feng said, "This situation is likely to shock everyone, so please be prepared." Everyone thought he was exaggerating. What could be so unacceptable in this situation? Lin Feng waited a few seconds before smiling. Based on my recent research, I've discovered that Sun Wukong, also known as the Great Sage, lived in an ancient era known as the Primordial Era. Primordial Era? Everyone was startled at the word. An inexplicable feeling settled within them. Lin Feng continued, "So, the Earth at that time was not called the Earth, but the Honghuang continent. The area of the Honghuang continent can be said to be boundless. Why do I say that? You can see it from the situation of the great sage. First of all, the great sage has the magical power of the somersault cloud, right? One somersault is 108,000 miles. What is the concept of 108,000 miles? For example, one circle of the Earth is 40,076 kilometers, so 108,000 miles is 54,000 kilometers. The great sage went around the Earth once with one somersault, and there was an extra 14,000 kilometers, which is obviously not right. Besides, the great sage fought against 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals. It is impossible that they were circling the Earth while fighting, right? This is too funny, hiss. Everyone took a collective breath and fell into shock when they heard this. Lin Feng added, the second point is also the most intuitive. In that era, there were countless powerful individuals, including figures like the great sage and Tathagata Buddha. If the environment at that time was only as big as the Earth, how could it possibly accommodate them? It's like taking a bucket and putting a few fry in it, it's fine. But if you put a few large fish weighing 4 or 5 pounds in it, it definitely won't fit. Everyone was shocked when these words came out. The example just given had made everyone somewhat believe it. Now, this more intuitive statement made everyone believe it completely. Suddenly, everyone couldn't control their excitement and burst into an uproar. Fuck, that makes sense, yet. If the Earth was this size during the prehistoric era, then there's no way it could have accommodated Sun, the great sage and the others. That's right. The great sage could have circled the Earth with a single somersault. Shocking. This is truly shocking. Professor Lin is incredible. He actually discovered this. Incredible. Today's lecture reveals the secrets of Earth's ancient past. It will absolutely shock the world and spark research into the Earth in countries around the world. That's right. This kind of thing will absolutely rock the world. Incredible. Professor Lin is truly incredible. Fuck. It suddenly occurred to me that Professor Lin's appearance was meant to bring about these events for us, right? What are you thinking? Do you think Professor Lin is also someone from the prehistoric era who has awakened? How is that possible? The audience erupted in uproar. Chen Haitian and the others were also shocked. They hadn't expected such a situation to occur. Lin Feng once again signaled for silence. After the crowd quieted down, he smiled again. Based on these circumstances, I propose a bold hypothesis. The transformation of the great desolate continent into the present-day Earth is most likely the result of a devastating war. The great desolate continent was shattered, resulting in Earth's appearance. Then, some of the fragments dissipated, while others drifted across the universe. For example, the Moon, which is close to Earth, is very likely a fragment of the great desolate continent. Everyone was collectively shocked and surprised. Seeing the stunned expressions on the audience's faces, Lin Feng knew his goal had been achieved. Next, he would reveal information about the Moon to spark their curiosity and exploration. Lin Feng smiled. Of course, these are just my hypotheses, and they can't be verified. If we go to the Moon and search, and find traces of the ancient war, then my hypothesis is correct. If not, then it means my hypothesis is wrong, and the great desolate continent transformed into the present-day Earth for another reason. Everyone nodded silently, understanding the meaning. But their curiosity was already piqued, and they wanted to know if there were any traces of the ancient war on the Moon. After all, if there were, it would prove that Professor Lin was right. But everyone knew that with China's current technology, landing on the Moon wouldn't be difficult. The hard part was finding traces of the ancient war on the Moon. Exploring the Moon must be difficult, right? Yeah, if we just landed there and dug up some dirt, we could do that. But exploring it in all its aspects is impossible. I suddenly want to go to the Moon, kid, go to bed. Dreams are full of dreams, The live stream was buzzing with comments, all expressing their desire to explore the Moon. Lin Feng saw the audience start discussing the Moon, and his lips curled up. He knew everyone was interested, and that was all that mattered. The first step of the plan was complete, and the next step was the second. Then, Lin Feng signaled for everyone to quiet down. Then, he said, well, today's lecture ends here. Thank you all for your support. In addition, let me say one more thing. We have now entered an extraordinary era. And with the awakening of these ancient characters, the future will undergo earth-shaking changes. Maybe, after all the ancient characters have revived, the ancient world may very likely reappear, and then we may be able to learn their abilities. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the room was shocked. Chapter 61. The lecture is over and the principal decides on a manned moon landing plan. Chapter 61. The lecture concluded, and the principal decided on a manned lunar landing. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 61. The lecture concluded, and the principal decided on a manned lunar landing. Everyone was filled with disbelief. A few seconds later, a heated discussion broke out. Professor Lin, is this true? Fuck. I remember even the Buddha said the same thing. Yeah, when did he say that? Why haven't I heard of it? Go away, go away. If you haven't heard of it, it means you haven't paid attention to this matter at all. Ha ha ha. If that's true, that's great, that's right. I'm so excited. The audience was in an uproar of discussion. Lin Feng smiled, extended his hand, and pressed it down, signaling for silence. When silence settled, he said, well, everyone, thank you for attending this lecture. See you next time. With that, Lin Feng waved goodbye and walked off the podium. The audience erupted in applause, thunderous. Everyone clapped with excitement. Because the information Lin Feng presented this time was truly shocking. The lecture ended with thunderous applause. But Lin Feng didn't leave immediately. He was surrounded by a group of professors and scholars. These excited old men pushed the reporters who had originally wanted to interview Lin Feng back to the back. Professor Lin, how do you know that Earth was called the Great Continent in ancient times? Can you tell me more about the evidence supporting the claim that the moon is a fragment of the Great Continent? Professor Lin, how confident are you that traces of the ancient war can be found on the moon? Professor Lin, are you acquainted with that Monkey King? If we can find traces of the ancient war on the moon, then that means you're right, and since the moon has never had any signs of human life, can we find other clues there? Yes, your theory is possible. But the prerequisite is that we can find traces of the ancient war and prove that the moon is a fragment of the Great Continent. These highly educated old men chattered, one after another. But they all used the honorific you, which showed that in their eyes, Lin Feng was a remarkable person. Their ideas were diverse and varied. Though old, their imaginations remained fertile. In fact, from the perspective of all of China, these people might be the very pillars that make human society stronger. Lin Feng greatly admired them. But of course, he wouldn't elaborate on many things right now. He paused, then interrupted their questions with a smile, saying, I can't answer these questions for now, as I don't have much evidence. However, if traces of ancient wars can be confirmed on the moon, then my speculation would be correct. The Earth was enormous in ancient times, and the moon is merely a fragment. This would be a discovery of great significance. Upon hearing this, everyone remained silent, their thoughts lingering. A moment later, when they regained consciousness, they discovered that Lin Feng had already left. Everyone's gaze shifted to Principal Zhao Songgang. They all shared a common thought. Now it all depended on what Zhao Songgang had to say. You have to know that at a world-renowned institution like Wukong University, Zhao Songgang holds a very high official position and holds considerable influence in the academic world. Furthermore, many elite students come from Wukong University. And those elite students are currently serving in various confidential departments in China. If they all work together, it would be an extremely powerful force. Zhao Songgang saw the gazes of his colleagues. He understood what they were thinking. Yet, he hesitated. After all, the matter was too huge. And with current technology, it would probably be difficult to achieve. However, just then, a cell phone rang. Zhao Songgang pulled out his phone. It was the president of the neighboring Jingchang University calling. He was slightly startled. Calling me at this hour? Could it be? He guessed the other party's intention. Immediately, he smiled, made a decision, and said to his colleagues, Notice, I will be meeting with the Jingchang University staff in the 5th floor conference room. Zhao Songgang had already made up his mind to apply to the country to build a rocket, land on the moon, explore its entire surface, and search for traces of the ancient war. This is a discovery of profound significance. And if confirmed, perhaps we'll find even more clues about the prehistoric era. With that, he answered the phone. Hello, this is Zhao Songgang. Zhao Songgang walked while speaking to the president of Jingchang University. The professors and scholars around him were all excited. Half an hour later, nearly 100 people sat in the large conference room. These were arguably the most influential figures in China's various fields. Software engineering, aerospace, information technology, history, and so on. These top minds in China gathered in this room. Zhao Songyang and the president of Jingcheng University sat in the middle of the conference table. Zhao Songyang glanced around, seeing no one else had entered. He said, "Are you all here? Let's begin this meeting." He straightened the manuscript on his desk and added, "The purpose of this meeting is to address what Professor Lin Feng has mentioned. We're going to send a manned mission to the moon to explore for traces of the ancient war." As soon as this was spoken, everyone understood. Zhao Songyang added, "Furthermore, this must be done as soon as possible to prevent other countries from surpassing us in lunar exploration." The other countries Zhao Songyang was referring to were the United States. "You all gathered here for the first time in history. I believe that with our combined strength, we will surely have the opportunity to accomplish the miracle of a manned lunar landing." The professors and scholars' faces flushed with excitement, especially after hearing these words, and hearing that they might be involved in this momentous event. Their hearts were filled with passion. China has endured countless hardships since the turn of the century. This time, they will regain glory and perhaps even lead the world forward. How could this not be exciting? Regarding this matter, the dean of our school's School of Astronautics is aware of the latest developments at NASA, the president of Jingcheng University said after Zhao Songyang finished. Then, he looked to an elderly man to his right and said, "Old Guo, please tell us." Yes, Professor Guo was the dean of Jingcheng University's School of Astronautics and also worked at NASA, having made significant contributions to China's space program. He pushed his glasses and said, "The space agency will launch a rocket for the moon exploration program soon. If we want to hurry up, then this is an opportunity." The president of Jingcheng University had already known about this situation, so his expression remained unchanged. However, the president of Wukong University, Zhao Songyang, and his group were all shocked. Immediately, they reacted and smiled excitedly. "Isn't this perfect? Yes. The time, the place, and the people are all right. Ha ha ha. This is too coincidental." No, rather than saying it's a coincidence, it's better to say that the national destiny has arrived. Yes. That's right. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Manned Lunar Landing Plan. Chapter 62, Manned Lunar Landing Plan, 2024-08-19 Author, Guigui Monster. Chapter 62, Manned Lunar Landing Plan. Everyone present was thrilled. Zhao Songyang immediately said, "I'll apply to the higher-ups for this matter. I'm sure they'll approve." Everyone agreed. If traces of the ancient war were truly discovered on the moon, the significance would be immense. There was no way they wouldn't agree. The president of Jingcheng University thought for a moment and said, "We need to come up with a plan now to ensure this plan is foolproof." Yes, Professor Guo, the dean of the School of Astronautics, nodded. Achieving a comprehensive lunar exploration is no easy task. Then, everyone began to discuss, each expressing their opinions, then summarizing them, and finally analyzing and discussing them. After 7 or 8 hours of discussion, and well into the night, the plan was finally finalized. It was pitch black outside, but the lights were brightly lit in the conference room. And no one's face showed fatigue, only excitement and fervor. Zhao Songyang, president of Wukong University, held a copy of the finalized plan in his hands. A smile spread across his face as he said, "That's all for now. I'll read it out. If there are any omissions or additions, please speak up." After that, Zhao Songyang began to read out, Point 1, this space program must carry out manned aviation. After all, data detection is not as good as on-site inspections. Many precise actions and on-the-spot contingency situations are not something that machines can do. Point 2, the speed of the space program must be fast. Relying on the lunar exploration rocket of the NASA, we have to make major modifications to the rocket within 20 days. Point 3, the search coverage area is very large, and the astronauts will be wearing spacesuits on the moon for a long time, so the spacesuits and the life support systems of the lunar module must be guaranteed. 4th, 5th, 27th point, 20 days later is the best launch time. We must launch within the original schedule of the NASA. Regardless of weather or orbital issues, 20 days later is the best time and cannot be delayed. There are a total of 27 key points, and many issues have been taken into consideration in detail. This is enough to prove how rich knowledge and strong execution capabilities the people present have. After Zhao Songyang finished reading, he looked at the group and asked, "Anyone see anything I've missed, or anything you'd like to add?" No one answered. The discussion had already been recorded. "Excellent," Zhao Songyang smiled and said, "Everyone, this is a truly significant exploration. But we only have 20 days to prepare. However, if we uncover traces of the ancient war, it will benefit all of humanity. I'll go apply to our superiors for this plan now." Dismissed. "Everyone, go back and rest." With that, Zhao Songyang stood up and hurried off. But everyone present was thrilled and excited. They were all participants in this project. Zhao Songyang didn't wait until dawn, but instead visited his superiors that very night to explain the situation. This showed how excited he was, and how eager he was to implement it quickly. Upon hearing the idea, his superiors also thought it a bit crazy. But after some consideration, they agreed. After all, this was a matter of immense significance. Orders were issued from the capital overnight, and the relevant departments began to work. Furthermore, space agencies across the country were dispatching technical personnel to Beijing to implement this plan. One night passed. Under the operation of the state machinery, the plan was already in full swing. And online, Lin Feng's lecture video had gone viral. There were full versions, as well as heavily edited versions. Of course, the edited versions only contained the important parts. These videos sparked heated discussions among netizens. Lin Feng's lecture contained quite a few explosive revelations. For example, the Tathagata Buddha was a Buddhist belief, and Buddhism should worship him, not the current generation. There was also the fact that Sun Wukong later became a Buddhist. And, most explosively, Earth was known as the Great Desolate Continent in ancient times. Back then, the Great Desolate Continent was boundless. But then, something unknown happened, perhaps a great war, shattering the Great Desolate Continent. Some of the fragments crumbled, while others flew across the universe. The moon could be one of those fragments. This news sparked heated discussion online. Fuck, is this news true or false? I don't know. Was the Earth originally called Honghuang Continent? And its area is boundless. Isn't this too shocking? Honghuang. Honghuang. Fuck, I feel like these two words are unusual. There's a special feeling. Yes. I feel so too. That's not important. What's important is, are there really traces of ancient battles on the moon? If Professor Lin's inference is correct, a major battle took place in Honghuang Continent, which shattered Honghuang Continent. Then it is really possible that there are traces of a major war left on the moon. Because there is no one on the moon, unlike our Earth, the stars have moved, the world has changed, the years have passed, and humans have multiplied and thrived. The traces of the battle at that time have long been covered or destroyed by human traces. Yes. What the above people said makes sense. Fuck. After listening to what you said, I want to go to the moon more and more. Me too. Ha ha ha. Stop dreaming. We can go to the moon now, but it's only by machines. It's impossible to carry people. But even if machines can go up, it is impossible to fully explore the moon. Yeah, netizens were abuzz with discussion, all clamoring to visit the moon. Consequently, this topic quickly topped the trending search lists on major platforms. Netizens, when will a manned lunar landing be possible? Is Professor Lin of Wukong University's speculation true? China Aerospace, work on it. And just as the internet was buzzing with discussion, the China Space Administration posted a Weibo post that instantly sent shockwaves across the internet. The post was titled, "We've received everyone's prayers, and we are currently working hard to realize our vision of a manned lunar landing." The content read, "Yesterday was an extraordinary day. Professor Lin Feng of Wukong University explained a major event. In ancient times, Earth was known as the primordial continent. Its area was immense, and perhaps a major battle later shattered it. Professor Lin Feng speculated that the moon was likely one of the fragments, and he also speculated that there might be traces of the primordial era on the moon. Therefore, the nation made the impromptu decision to create a manned lunar landing, land on the moon, and conduct a comprehensive exploration of the moon, searching for traces of the primordial era. We are currently intensively developing this product, and any new developments will be announced on our official website. Please do not believe any rumors." This Weibo post was short, only about 200 words. And as is often the case in China, the fewer words, the bigger the story. So, as soon as this post went out, it instantly shocked the entire internet. Holy crap! Chapter 63 is hotly discussed on the entire internet, Lin Feng's successful layout. Chapter 63, the whole network is hotly discussing, Lin Feng has successfully laid out his plan, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 63, the whole network is hotly discussing, Lin Feng has successfully laid out his plan. Netizens are excited, and they can't believe it. This news is really too sudden. For a time, they have been commenting, "Oh shit. This is explosive news, is this true or false? Why do I find it hard to believe it, or am I dreaming? This is officially released by NASA, how could it be false?" That's right. Besides, you can't even dream of such a thing. Ha ha ha, that makes sense. Oh shit, that's awesome. The country is so quick. Yeah, Professor Lin gave a lecture yesterday, and the country made a decision today. It has to be fast. This is something of great discovery significance. Is there a possibility that the country made a decision overnight? Anyway, this is a good thing. Where can I sign up for the manned lunar landing program? I want to be an astronaut, and I want to explore the moon myself. Yes, I want it too. I can even sign a waiver. I want to go down in history. Okay, forget it. Astronauts have to go through a lot of training to become one. You can't just become one if you want to. As soon as this Weibo post was posted, it became the #1 hot search in less than 10 minutes. Furthermore, news platforms responded to the national call and rushed to report on the event. Even major universities began broadcasting announcements. With this kind of publicity, within half a day, nearly everyone in the country knew about the event. This was perfectly normal. After all, this was a matter of immense significance, and the nation needed to know. Thanks to the Chinese government's promotional efforts, the news also spread to overseas websites, where it also sparked an uproar and discussion. Netizens from France and Chicken, "Oh my god, China is making such a big move." Netizens from Great Ying, "It's hard to understand. They are going to such great lengths to carry out a manned moon landing just for a professor's speculation." Netizens from China, "Then don't understand. How can you people know how meaningful it would be if traces of the primitive times were really found on the moon?" Netizens from China, "That's right." Netizens from Sakura, "I don't think you can find anything. The professor just speculated and didn't produce any substantial evidence. Besides, this kind of thing is too outrageous. So, you may not find anything in the end." Netizens from Sakura, "Ha ha ha, what are you trying to persuade them for? Let them act stupid." Netizens from China, "You know shit. Several things Professor Lin said have come true, and what he said sometimes was said by people in ancient times after they woke up. For example, Tathagata Buda." Netizens from China, "Don't argue with them, they are a bunch of idiots. They have no idea how much Professor Lin means to us in China now." US netizens, "Ha ha ha, China is actually planning a manned lunar landing too? Stop kidding, can you even do it?" US netizens, "That's right, don't waste your energy. So far, only the US has achieved a manned lunar landing." Russian netizens, "This is killing me. Still talking about your US manned lunar landing? Isn't that a hoax? Everyone knows it, only you Americans don't know it." Chinese netizens, "Ha ha ha. China." Lin Feng sat under the pavilion. Today was a clear, cloudless day. Even during the day, the outline of the moon could be seen. Lin Feng gazed at the moon with a smile on his face. He had seen the information online and learned about the situation back home from Zhaosonggang. Everything is ready. Now all that's left is the layout for the moon, Lin Feng said with a smile. The random task issued by the system was to have Yangjian dug out from the moon. So, everything he had done before was to arouse China's curiosity about the moon. And now, he had accomplished it. The country is preparing to develop a manned lunar landing system for comprehensive lunar exploration. His final move is to create traces of the prehistoric continent on the moon. System, open them all. I want to purchase a character. With that, a virtual panel appeared, displaying various character cards. Search for Erlang Shen Yangjian's character card, Lin Feng said. Yangjian's character card popped up. He wielded a three-pointed, double-edged sword, clad in silver-white armor, and sported 3 eyes. Far from looking strange, he was handsome, his gaze deep and resolute. Below the character card was the required shock value. A total of 150,000 shock values. Purchase Yangjian's character card, Ling. Purchase successful. Congratulations on obtaining the Yangjian Level 1 role-playing card. Immediately, the virtual panel displayed the personal attributes: name, Lin Feng, Character cards: Sun Wukong, Tathagata Buda, Erlang Shen Yang Jian. Role-playing points: Sun Wukong 4078 points, Tathagata Buda 889 points. Erlang Shen Yang Jian currently has no points. Note: role-playing points cannot be transferred between characters. Points earned for a character can only be used for that character. Shock points: 25,382 points. Note: shock points can be used to purchase items in the store, including but not limited to mythical character cards. I had over 170,000 before, but after buying Yang Jian, I still have over 20,000 shock points left. I should think about building something to place on the moon as a reminder of the ancient prehistoric continent. Lin Feng has already purchased Yang Jian's character card, but he still needs to purchase an immortal palace or some other structure to place on the moon as a reminder of the prehistoric continent. This will only confirm his claims and create a greater sense of shock. Lin Feng selects the Immortal Palace page of the system store. The last system upgrade added more than just character pages. Other pages have also been added. The Immortal Palace category boasts numerous buildings from the prehistoric era, including cave dwellings like the Slanting Moon 3 Stars Cave, Flower Fruit Mountain, and 5 Zhuang Temple, as well as mountain gates like the Penglai 3 Immortal Islands, Biao Palace, and Kunlun Mountain, some of which even contain gate formations. Furthermore, these immortal palaces possess abilities from the prehistoric era. For example, they boast rare and precious animals, exotic flowers and fruits, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once these items were exchanged for, they would surely create an awe-inspiring spectacle. However, these items were prohibitively expensive, often costing hundreds of millions or even tens of millions of shock points. Lin Feng currently only had a little over 20,000 shock points, so he could only gaze upon them and not exchange them. My wallet is tight. I don't have enough shock points. Lin Feng shook his head helplessly. It seemed he needed to work harder and earn more shock points. The good news was that he only needed to create a trace of the prehistoric continent on the moon, so a cheap immortal palace building would suffice. Nothing so lavish as that was necessary. Lin Feng browsed through the merchandise in the mall. From tens of millions, to millions and hundreds of thousands, and then to tens of thousands. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he spotted a product. This one's good. It's cheap, but if used well, it can have a great effect. Lin Feng grinned and looked up at the silhouette of the moon. Next, I should find a time to start construction. Chapter 64 Chen Haitian comes to Tony for help. Chapter 64, Chen Haitian comes to Tony for help. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 64, Chen Haitian comes to Tony for help. This lunar exploration mission is scheduled to be launched at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. Since this mission involves a manned lunar landing, the existing rocket will require significant modifications. First, the energy source must be changed. After landing, sufficient fuel must be available for a safe return to Earth. Second, the space capsule's life support system must be enhanced to ensure the astronauts can survive there for a long period of time. Exploring the moon will take time. Finally, the space suits also need enhanced life support systems and a power supply. In a vacuum environment, wearing bulky space suits makes movement difficult. Without a power supply, astronauts will easily tire, making lunar exploration impossible. Furthermore, there are many other challenges, both large and small. The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center has already mobilized numerous industry technicians and professors from across the country to conduct research. However, they still lack manpower. Furthermore, many challenges remain unsolved. Time is running out. There are only 19 days left. Therefore, the only option was to send these and other difficult issues to the various relevant departments, hoping to pool their wisdom and see if they could be overcome. Ministry of State Security. Chen Haitian watched the video of Lin Feng's lecture, a look of astonishment and confusion on his face. He had attended the lecture in person, but watching it again, he still felt astonished and incredulous. How did he know all this? This is truly intriguing, Chen Haitian muttered, frowning slightly. He had researched Lin Feng's identity, and there was nothing unusual about him. He was just a folk history enthusiast. But how could a folk history enthusiast know all this? Chen Haitian pondered for a moment and decided to find a time to visit Lin Feng in person. Ding-ling-ling. Ding-ling-ling. Just then, a phone rang rapidly. Chen Haitian reached for the receiver, put it to his ear, and said, "Hello, this is Chen Haitian. Director Chen, A document will be delivered to you shortly. It's about the manned lunar landing plan. We need Tony Stark's help. Go talk to him, a voice came from the receiver. A manned lunar landing? Chen Haitian was stunned. Then he realized that the scientists at NASA had run into a problem and had come to Tony Stark for help. Chen Haitian replied, "Yes, I understand." The other party hung up. Chen Haitian replaced the receiver, a thoughtful expression on his face. He didn't know what the problem might be. But if it came to Stark, it had to be a big one. However, Chen Haitian had agreed to Tony join the Chinese supernatural department in the hope that his brilliant mind could contribute to China. Otherwise, why would he have agreed to let him join? Chen Haitian waited a moment. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Come in. With that, the door opened, and a subordinate walked in. He was holding a folder and anxiously said, "Report, an urgent document from above, requiring our immediate execution." "I understand." Chen Haitian stood up, took the document, and left. In the laboratory, Tony was working on the new reactor. The previous severe palladium poisoning left a deep impression on him. However, time was of the essence, forcing him to continue using that reactor. Now, with time, he could try to develop a new elemental reactor. Of course, Tony actually wanted to study the power wielded by Sun Wukong, Tathagata Buda, and others, and see if he could master it himself. However, since he couldn't even see them, there was no way. "Stark," a voice called from behind him. Tony turned and saw Chen Haitian hurried over, a folder in hand. "Director Chen, what can I do for you? I need your assistance." "What is it?" "China is planning a manned space mission to the moon for comprehensive exploration. Are you aware of this?" Yes, this news had been widely reported online, and Tony was naturally aware of it. He had also been thinking about visiting the moon to see if there were indeed any traces of the prehistoric continent. Suddenly, Tony realized what Chen Haitian was talking about. "We're having some trouble with the manned lunar landing rocket. Take a look and see if you have any ideas or thoughts." With that, Chen Haitian handed the folder to Tony. "Just as I expected," Tony thought. Then, while removing his rubber gloves, he said, "Put the file over there for now. I don't like accepting things handed to me." Chen Haitian didn't understand what was going on, but without giving it much thought, he put the file on the table next to him. Tony washed his hands, came over, picked up the folder, and began to read. The more he read, the deeper his frown deepened. After a long pause, he finished, put the file away, and said to Chen Haitian, "Director Chen, you're facing an energy supply problem, right?" "Yes." Chen Haitian also looked at the file. It said it was an energy supply problem, meaning they didn't know what kind of energy source would be best. He asked, "Do you have any good ideas?" Tony knew that if he joined the Chinese supernatural department, he had to make a difference, or they wouldn't keep him. "So," he said, "currently, conventional energy sources, such as high-purity fuel, can provide enough power for a rocket to reach the moon. However, this fuel is too heavy and a burden. Since we're building a manned rocket, it requires a lot of equipment. Therefore, reducing weight is essential. Furthermore, conventional energy sources are insufficient to support the daily operations of the space capsule, including the SpaceX life support system and kinetic energy device. And being so far away on the moon, regular resupply is impossible. Regular resupply consumes too much energy, requiring a rocket launch every few days. Using the sun for energy wouldn't work either, as the landing site wouldn't always have sunlight. Furthermore, the moon's temperature can reach -120–180 degrees Celsius, freezing a person into an ice sculpture, so a constant energy source is essential. Chen Haitian's analysis made sense. However, the scientists must have considered these issues, otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered with the energy source. He asked Tony, "Then do you have any good energy methods?" "Yes," Tony nodded, then pointed to the reactor on his chest and said, "Use this to provide energy." Chen Haitian's eyes lit up instantly, looking at the reactor on Tony's chest. "Yes, why didn't I think of this? This is a good thing." However, before Chen Haitian could be happy for 3 seconds, Tony's words were like a cold water poured on him. "However, this current reactor won't work. If too much energy is released, the palladium element will be released uncontrollably along with the energy. This will radiate the human body and cause palladium poisoning. Therefore, I need to develop a new reactor." Chapter 65 The Way Energy is Provided. Chapter 65 Ways of Providing Energy. 2024, 0819 Author, Good Monster Chapter 65 Ways of Providing Energy. Palladium Poisoning? Chen Haitian couldn't help but think of the Tony he saw that day. His face was pale, the blood vessels under his neck were all black, he was extremely weak, and he looked like he was going to die at any time. After that, Tony told Chen Haitian that he was suffering from severe palladium poisoning. Chen Haitian thought about it and felt that such a reactor was indeed not suitable as a way of providing energy. He asked again, "How long will it take you to develop a new reactor?" "We plan to launch a lunar exploration rocket in 20 days, Tony pondered for a moment and said, 10 days. "If 10 days doesn't work, I will think of other ways to provide energy." "Okay," Chen Haitian nodded, "I'll leave this matter to you." After that, he turned and left. But then, Tony's voice rang out from behind him, "By the way, Chief Chen, I've invited a friend to join the extraordinary organization with me. He's a very talented physicist." "Okay," Chen Haitian turned around and said, "but I need to verify his qualifications." "You understand what I mean, of course," Tony smiled. United States. New York was essentially destroyed. The Statue of Liberty was completely torn apart. The explosion of the power source of an aerospace carrier is no joke. "Nick," Pierce angrily shouted at Nick, "what the hell is going on? Didn't you say your Avengers plan would work?" Nick had several band-aids on his face and his broken arm bandaged. He said, "Who could have imagined that the Mandarin would use the Tesseract to open a space tunnel, allowing alien civilizations to invade Earth?" "That's not the point," Pierce shouted angrily. "The point is that you misjudged the Mandarin. You didn't understand what the Mandarin was going to do with the Tesseract, indirectly causing the crash of the aerospace carrier and destroying the entire city of New York. Do you have any idea how serious that loss was?" Nick remained silent. He hadn't imagined that even after fleeing, he would still be targeted and misunderstood by Sun Wukong, leading to his destruction of the aerospace carrier. Seeing Nick's silence, Pierce was furious. But there was nowhere else to vent his anger except on Nick. He couldn't go after Sun Wukong, right? Would that be asking for trouble? The more Pierce thought about it, the more angry he became. This feeling of having to swallow his anger was truly frustrating. Suddenly, a thought occurred to him. He asked, "Is there any news on Tony Stark yet?" "No," Nick replied. "And I asked Miss Pepper, the CEO of Stark Industries, and she also said there's no trace of Stark and she's sending people to look for him." Pierce paused, then said, "Could he have died in Hong Kong?" "I don't think so." Nick frowned, his only remaining eye itched. The Tathagata Buddha resurrected all the dead back then. If Stark had died, he would have been resurrected as well. Pierce thought this made sense. If that's the case, then we must find him. You know what Stark Industries means to the United States, and he holds the Iron Man suit and the technology for the miniature reactor. These are invaluable things, I understand, Nick said. In fact, he had been sending people to search for Tony Stark's whereabouts, but there was no news. Pierce paused, then added, "Who knows who that Lin Feng is in China? A single lecture has galvanized China into a manned lunar landing, an exploration of the lunar landscape, and a search for traces of the prehistoric continent. We've investigated Lin Feng's identity and found him to be a folk history enthusiast." "Nothing special," Nick replied. "Isn't that just a folk charlatan?" Pierce laughed at this and said, "Have Chinese scholars died out? Or have the appearances of Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buddha led them to blindly believe these unfounded claims? They claim the moon is a fragment of the prehistoric continent, and that there must be traces of the prehistoric continent on it. There's no real evidence for this, just speculation, and yet the Chinese believe it? It's hilarious. Don't go to all that trouble, finally land a man on the moon, and then, after a thorough exploration, find nothing." Pierce's words had a basis. With the current level of American technology, while they couldn't fully observe the moon, they could still observe some. Judging from all this, the moon couldn't possibly be a fragment of the great desolate continent. Seeing Pierce smile, Nick relaxed a little. He'd previously witnessed the abilities of Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buddha, and had begun to believe such fanciful notions. But the idea that the moon was a fragment of the great desolate continent was ridiculous, with no real basis, so he didn't buy it either. However, he'd be happy to see China's efforts go in vain. That would be fascinating. Ding-ling-ling. Ding-ling-ling. Just then, a cell phone rang, as if signaling something urgent. Pierce looked at Nick. Nick quickly picked up the phone on the table, answered it, and said, "Hello, this is Nick Fury. Chief, something terrible has happened. Robert Bruce Banner has escaped from prison. Hiss. Nick took a breath, then, his expression growing serious, he asked, "Have you found any trace of him?" "No, we don't know where he went." Nick's face darkened. "If he'd escaped, if we knew where he was, we could still recapture him. But without a trace, that was a problem." Without giving it any further thought, he said, "Okay, I'll come right over." With that, he hung up. Pierce noticed a change in Nick's expression and frowned, asking, "What happened?" "Banner escaped from prison," Nick said. "Banner?" Pierce's eyes flickered with confusion. But then, he remembered who it was, and his expression suddenly changed. "That Hulk?" "Yes." Pierce's scalp tingled. He knew Banner's identity. He was a super genius, a physicist. But he also had another identity, one that was extremely dangerous, the Hulk. The Hulk was incredibly violent and destructive. If he escaped into the city, who knew how much damage he would cause? "Quick, catch him as soon as possible," Pierce ordered hastily. "Yes," Nick replied. China, Beijing. At the gate of the newly established paranormal department, a foreigner rode up on a shared yellow scooter and stopped at the entrance. The foreigner looked up at the department in front of him and muttered, "This must be the place Miss Pepper is talking about." He was Dr. Banner. With Pepper's help, Dr. Banner had escaped the United States and arrived in the Chinese capital. All of this was Tony's order. Dr. Banner had been terrified on the way here, worried that he might be provoked into transforming into the Hulk and wreaking havoc. Fortunately, the journey was uneventful, allowing him to reach his destination safely. Dr. Banner parked his shared bike and walked forward, but was stopped by the agent on guard. "Stop. No access to this important department. Please leave." Dr. Banner figured that since Tony Stark needed his help and had him here, he must have a purpose. "So," he said truthfully, "I'm here to see Tony Stark." "Tony Stark?" The agent frowned. Tony Stark and Thor's joining the Supernatural Bureau was a highly confidential matter, known only to very few. The agent looked Dr. Banner up and down, and just to be on the safe side, he said, "Isn't he in the United States? How could he be in China? Let's go." Chapter 66 excited Tony. Chapter 66, Tony's Excitement 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 66, Tony's Excitement. Banner was bewildered upon hearing this. But he had fled to China from the United States and had never met Tony, so there was no way to prove that Tony had invited him here. And there was another problem. The United States seemed unclear about Tony Stark's situation and where he was. Some even believed he had died in the alien invasion of Xiangjiang City. Banner stopped thinking. Since the other party said so, he should leave here first. What if he got upset here and turned into the Hulk, hurting others? It would be bad. Anyway, if Tony Stark didn't wait for him, he would probably come looking for him. With this thought in mind, Banner said, "Okay," then he turned and walked away. But just then, an English voice came from behind him. "Are you looking for Stark?" Banner heard this and turned to see a middle-aged man dressed in a suit and trousers, dressed like a secret agent. Although he didn't know who the man was, the fact that he asked such a question must mean he knew something. Banner nodded and said in English, "Okay, I'll come find him." Chen Haitian had just left Tony's place when he saw someone coming for him. But when he saw Banner's face, he gasped, startled. "It's him, Dr. Banner." As the head of the Ministry of National Security, Chen Haitian naturally knew some of America's secrets, including Dr. Banner's situation. Dr. Banner, a superstar physicist, was exposed to gamma rays, giving rise to his alter ego, the Hulk. The Hulk was powerful, violent, and incredibly destructive. At this thought, Chen Haitian realized something else. Could this be the person Stark was talking about? Chen Haitian pondered it and felt it was very likely. Banner, seeing the visitor's surprised reaction, realized they might know his identity, otherwise they wouldn't react that way. Feeling a little nervous, fearing arrest, he quickly stated his purpose. "Stark invited me here. He said he's had a problem." Chen Haitian thought, it must be the problem with the new elemental reactor. He said, "In that case, come with me." "Okay." Back in the lab, Chen Haitian said to Tony's busy back, "Stark, someone's here to see you." Tony heard the voice, turned around, and saw Banner standing next to Chen Haitian. His eyes lit up, and he quickly took off his gloves, walked over, extended his hand, and said with a smile, "Hello, Dr. Banner." "Hello." Banner extended his hand and shook Tony's. However, he seemed a little reserved and inferior. This was normal. After all, he had the Hulk inside him. and no one liked the Hulk, so he felt inferior because of it. Relax a little, Tony smiled. This was his first time meeting Banner. However, he had known about Banner for a long time. Banner also forced a smile. Tony then got down to business, addressing Chen Haitian. Director Chen, I've asked Dr. Banner to help me. Can he join the Supernatural Administration? Yes. Does he need to undergo a qualification check? No, Chen Haitian said with a smile. We Chinese have an old saying, if you employ someone, trust him. If you doubt him, don't employ him. Since it was Dr. Banner, he couldn't be a spy sent by the United States. After all, a dangerous figure like the Hulk would always be imprisoned in the United States and would never be released. So, in this case, he must have escaped from a U.S. prison at Stark's invitation. Yes, Tony nodded with a smile. He knew what Chen Haitian meant by the qualification check. Since they were Americans, they were somewhat concerned. But Dr. Banner's words were completely reassuring. He couldn't possibly be a spy sent by the United States. Banner was a little confused, but he understood the meaning. Chen Haitian said, "All right, you guys get on with your work." He was about to leave, but Banner stopped him. "You're just going to leave me here? You won't prepare a separate room for me?" "I'm afraid the Hulk might show up," Banner said, looking somewhat pitiful and self-deprecating. It was clear that the Hulk had traumatized him. But Chen Haitian smiled and said, "No, just try not to let him show up." Banner was shocked. He hadn't expected to be treated this way in China. He felt like he was being treated as an equal, not held against him just because he had the Hulk inside him. Chen Haitian said nothing more and turned away. In truth, he wasn't afraid of Banner losing control at all, because China had a great sage to protect him. Banner stared at Chen Haitian's back in amazement. Then, Tony patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't stare at me. What's so good about a man? Take a look at this." "Do you have any ideas?" Tony brought out a stack of blueprints. Banner came to his senses, took the blueprints, and began to examine them. But after looking at a few, he was surprised and asked, "Did you make all of these?" "Yes, incredible, Stark, you're truly talented," Banner praised. Tony smiled and said, "Do you think we can discover new elements this way?" "It's hard to say," Banner shook his head. Then, he said seriously, "But following this idea, increasing the collisions of particles should be possible." "Okay, let's give it a try," Tony said excitedly. Chen Haitian left the Supernatural Administration and drove to Lin Feng's residence. He had previously planned to visit Lin Feng, but suddenly his superiors sent an urgent document instructing him to ask Tony for help. Now that he had some free time, he decided to visit Lin Feng. Arriving at the garden where Lin Feng lived, Chen Haitian said, "Professor Lin, is Professor Lin here?" He called out a few times, and a response came from inside. "I'm coming." After a while, the door opened. Lin Feng looked outside with a bit of surprise at the familiar face. He had met Chen Haitian a few times, but only when he was acting in a role, never in person. So, to avoid surprise, he asked, "Who are you?" Lin Feng had actually planned to go to the moon tonight, but someone came to visit, so he postponed it. "Oh, I'm from the Ministry of State Security. My name is Chen Haitian." Chen Haitian smiled. "I was deeply moved by Professor Lin's lecture the other day, so I thought I'd come visit you and chat with you." "Oh, so, come in then." Lin Feng stepped aside, making way. Lin Feng poured Chen Haitian a cup of tea. Chen Haitian's eyes remained fixed on Lin Feng. He hadn't been able to get a good look at Lin Feng during the lecture, but now that he could, he still thought he was just an ordinary guy. Aside from his good temperament and handsome looks, there was nothing special about him. But this was exactly what was odd. How did he know these clues from ancient times? Chen Haitian pondered this, and after Lin Feng sat down opposite him, he said, "Professor Lin, I've actually been wondering about something." "Oh, what's it?" "We've researched your information and have a good understanding of you. So, based solely on your past experiences, it's hard for me to understand how you could know so many clues about ancient times, even to the point of deducing that the moon is a fragment of the ancient continent." Chapter 67 What if I really am a character from the prehistoric continent? Chapter 67 What if I really am from the primordial continent? 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 67 What if I really am from the primordial continent? Upon hearing this, Lin Feng understood his purpose. He smiled and said, "Why do you think that is?" Chen Haitian said, "Some people online speculate that you might also be from the primordial continent, and have now awakened, Ha ha ha, Lin Feng laughed. Are the online speculations so outrageous? Yes, Lin Feng paused, then smiled. What if I really am? Chen Haitian was stunned. Then, he shook his head and said, Professor Lin, you're joking. How is that possible? The awakened figures from the primordial continent, such as Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buda, all appeared and disappeared without a trace. After Sun Wukong flew away, they investigated his direction, but he disappeared mid-flight, never landing in a human city. Therefore, it was clear that they did not live among humans. Moreover, people like them, who are powerful, mysterious, and from the prehistoric continent, cannot live with humans. Therefore, it can be inferred that Professor Lin is not a person from the prehistoric continent. Chen Haitian thought about this. However, he also saw that Lin Feng did not want to answer this question. Although Chen Haitian was curious, he did not ask any more questions. After all, he came to visit, not to interrogate, and if he dared to interrogate Lin Feng, he would probably be drowned in the saliva on the internet, and even his position would be lost. He talked about another thing. Professor Lin, what you said in your previous lecture was that the moon is one of the fragments of the prehistoric continent, and there are very likely traces of the prehistoric continent on it. Now the country is stepping up the research and development of manned rockets, and in 18 days they will launch a landing on the moon for comprehensive exploration. What do you think about this? Seeing that Chen Haitian changed the subject, although he didn't know what he was thinking, Lin Feng didn't think about it too much. He said, based on my research, there's a high possibility that there are traces of the Great Desolation continent on the moon. But this is ultimately my speculation. The true situation can only be determined by lunar exploration. The country's response has somewhat exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect a country to make such a quick decision. However, this also shows the importance the country attaches to this matter. Yes, Chen Haitian nodded in agreement. As a member of the Ministry of State Security, he was naturally aware of the country's emphasis on this matter. Lin Feng smiled again. Of course, this is also a good thing. If my speculation is confirmed, then when other characters from the Great Desolation continent awaken in the future, we will understand their error and have corresponding measures in place. This is a perfect benefit with no harm. Chen Haitian nodded. He naturally understood this principle. He continued, however, the current development of manned rockets faces significant problems, the biggest of which is the method of providing energy. This has now been handed over to Tony Stark in the United States. He plans to use reactors as a method of providing energy. However, he said that the reactors currently available have major problems. The large-scale release of energy will cause the palladium element to spread rapidly, causing radiation to the human body. Therefore, he is stepping up the development of new element reactors and using them in manned rockets as an energy source. However, he said that this is not easy. Chen Haitian did not mention that Tony had now joined the supernatural administration. After all, this was confidential. Hearing this, Lin Feng smiled and said, now that you mention it, I have an idea. I wonder if it will work. What idea? Chen Haitian asked curiously, not understanding what Lin Feng meant. Lin Feng said, palladium's radioactivity is unstable, so we can disregard it. We can first construct a microscopic field to observe the neutron fission process. Once it continues to fission, perhaps new changes will occur. Then, using high-voltage pulse technology, we can find a way to collide them, perhaps producing a new element. This new element might be suitable. Chen Haitian's face was filled with shock. From the moment he heard the first sentence, he knew what Lin Feng was talking about. But isn't Professor Lin a history expert? How come he also understands technology? And he's even offering advice on Tony Stark's problem. Chen Haitian was stunned and incredulous. But he didn't understand technology, so he wondered if Lin Feng's words made sense. He thought for a moment, wondering, could it be that he's trying to get me to leave here, to confirm it, and not delve into his identity for the time being? However, Chen Haitian still had a clear understanding of the priorities at this point. Although he longed to know Lin Feng's true situation, it was clear that the situation with this man's space flight was more important. If Tony Stark could solve the energy supply problem, then the manned rocket's problems would be largely solved. With this thought in mind, he stopped thinking and stood up, saying to Lin Feng, sorry, Professor Lin, I need to make a phone call. Okay, go ahead. Seeing Chen Haitian's shocked and flustered expression, Lin Feng smiled, remaining calm. He knew Chen Haitian was going to call Tony Stark about this matter. and his original intention was the same, to get Tony to build a new reactor as soon as possible to provide energy for the manned rocket. This way, his plan would be foolproof and could be put into practice quickly. Chen Haitian quickly stood up and left the room. By the time he reached the fake hill, it was already dark. Chen Haitian pulled out his phone and called Tony Stark. Failed. Tony frowned, looking at the now destroyed crystal. He and Banner tried their previous design. It failed, and the crystal was completely destroyed. Banner, staring at the ruined crystal, was at a loss. Developing a safe, stable, and energy-efficient reactor was no easy task. After all, it was a technological revolution. Once it was developed, many other ideas and concepts could be explored. Banner looked at Tony and asked, "Tony, how many days do we have left?" While trying out their plan, Tony explained the current situation. So, he understood Tony's urgency to develop a new reactor. 9 days. If this reactor doesn't work, we'll have to consider other energy sources. Only 9 days. Banner thought it was too much. It was too short, impossible. Tony said nothing. Ding. Ding. But just then, a cell phone rang rapidly. Tony picked it up from the table and saw it was Chen Haitian calling. Tony was puzzled. Why was he calling at this hour? He answered the phone and said, "Hello, Director Chen. What's up? I'm doing research here, Stark. Listen to me first. I'm with Lin Feng, Professor Lin." Chen Haitian's voice came from the phone. "Professor Lin." "Yes, Professor Lin just raised a point about the problem you're facing," Chen Haitian said quickly. "What did you say?" Tony was startled. "Professor Lin raised a point?" Chapter 68 Lin Feng starts construction on the moon. Chapter 68 Lin Feng starts construction on the moon. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 68 Lin Feng starts construction on the moon. Tony frowned. He thought this was outrageous. Isn't Professor Lin a history professor? How could he understand technology? He thought about it and asked tentatively, "Director Chen, are you kidding me? I don't have time to joke now." He would rather believe that Chen Haitian was joking with him than believe what Chen Haitian said. Lin Feng gave his opinion on the difficulties he encountered. "Why would I joke with you?" Chen Haitian said. "Listen to me first, then figure it out for yourself." "I don't have any knowledge of this," Chen Haitian quickly added. "Professor Lin said that palladium's radioactivity is unstable, so we can disregard it. We can first build a microscopic field to observe the neutron fission process. Wait until it continues to fission, and then, perhaps, new changes will occur. Then, using high-voltage pulse technology, we can find a way to collide them, and perhaps a new element will be produced. This new element might be suitable." Tony was startled. He was a brilliant scientist, so as soon as these words came out, he felt like he had suddenly realized something. He pondered for a moment, and this idea was surprisingly better than his previous one, and even more feasible. He was instantly stunned. This idea was really proposed by Professor Lin? He was incredible. Banner, standing nearby, saw Tony's expression change so dramatically and asked curiously, "Tony, what did Director Chen say?" Banner had glanced at the caller ID, but he hadn't heard Chen Haitian's words clearly. Hearing this, Tony quickly switched on speakerphone and said, "Director Chen, please repeat your answer." Chen Haitian was confused, but he didn't refuse. Instead, he repeated Lin Feng's words. "Palladium's radioactivity is unstable, so we can disregard it. We can start by building a microscopic field." Hiss. When Chen Haitian finished, Banner gasped. He was also a genius, so Chen Haitian's words felt like a revelation. Now, after careful consideration, he felt that this method was indeed feasible, and highly feasible. "Director Chen, where did you get this idea?" Banner asked, surprised. He knew it couldn't have been Chen Haitian's idea. He must have heard it from someone else. Banner thought to himself, "I never thought Director Chen even knew someone like him." Chen Haitian, hearing the question, hadn't realized Banner was there. However, he didn't think much of it. He said, "It's Professor Lin Feng. He heard about the problem you're facing and proposed an idea." Professor Lin. Banner's expression was startled. He'd heard about him from Tony, so he knew him. But wasn't he a history professor? How could he even have such profound knowledge of science? Incredible. This is incredible. Banner was stunned. Then, Chen Haitian said, "Stark, I don't understand this. What do you think of this idea?" Tony, coming to his senses, replied truthfully, It's very feasible, but I can't guarantee its success at this point. We need to run some experiments." He then looked at Banner, who nodded in approval. "Okay, then, run the experiment as soon as possible." "I'll be right back," Chen Haitian said eagerly. "This is a big deal. If we can solve the energy supply problem, then the manned rocket project is more than halfway complete." Yet, after hanging up the phone, Chen Haitian turned and looked inside. The lights were still on. Chen Haitian was still deeply shocked. He hadn't expected Lin Feng to come up with such an idea, and even receive such high recognition from Tony Stark. Even Tony Stark was stumped by this question. "His identity is becoming increasingly mysterious," Chen Haitian frowned. He knew so much about Sun Wukong and the others, and he could even point out Tony's problems and offer solutions. But then Chen Haitian didn't think much about it. Right now, the manned rocket was more important. He didn't re-enter the room. Instead, he stood there and thanked him. "Professor Lin, thank you for your suggestion. We're currently conducting experiments on it. I'll go back and see what you're up to. I'll visit you another day." "Okay, go ahead," a calm laugh emanated from the room. Chen Haitian paused, unsure of what he was thinking. Then, he hurried away. After a while, Lin Feng emerged from the room. The technological concept Lin Feng had shared with Chen Haitian was merely a research idea Tony had later discovered. His primary motivation, as he had previously mentioned, was to expedite the completion of the manned lunar landing program. Lin Feng looked up at the moon in the night sky. Today was the third day of the lunar calendar, and the moon was a crescent, resembling a sickle, less than half its full size. "Next, it's time to make plans on the moon," Lin Feng said with a smile. Immediately, he chose to play the role of Tathagata Buddha. A flash of golden light flashed, and he transformed into the Buddha, sitting cross-legged on a lotus pedestal. Then, with a swish, his figure vanished. When he reappeared, he was already on the far side of the moon. The far side of the moon was barren, cold, airless, and riddled with pits. If the Earth were a living planet, the moon would be like a long-dead planet, devoid of any life. An ordinary person, under such circumstances, would instantly be frozen into an ice sculpture. However, Lin Feng was currently playing the role of Tathagata Buddha, so he felt no discomfort at all. Lin Feng looked around and decided that this was the right place for the current situation. "Amitabha, let's create the traces of the prehistoric continent here," Lin Feng chanted. Then, he summoned the system and began construction. Elsewhere, Tony and Banner worked tirelessly, preparing for the experiment according to Lin Feng's ideas. After a day and a night of experimentation, they had indeed successfully discovered a new element. This new element boasted a higher energy output than palladium and was also more stable, making it a perfect candidate for the new reactor. It worked. Tony was thrilled and excited. Banner, after a moment of excitement, quickly controlled his emotions, fearing the Hulk might suddenly appear. The two of them quickly broke the news to Chen Haitian, who was stunned. "It worked? Incredible. Professor Lin's ideas actually solved this problem." Chen Haitian was in disbelief. Without further ado, he quickly reported the good news. He hurriedly said, "Hurry up and organize the test data and write a detailed report. I'll be right there." Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center. Since this was a manned lunar landing and comprehensive lunar exploration, the rocket system needed to undergo a major overhaul. This presented numerous challenges, both large and small. However, these challenges were gradually being addressed, with one remaining issue remaining unresolved: the energy supply. Scientists drawn from across the country were locked in a fierce debate over this issue. Specifically, I had my ideas, you had yours, and he had his own plan. So far, no one had reached a consensus, and several arguments had even led to physical fights. This demonstrated the complexity and difficulty of the situation. But then, a document, specially airlifted from a certain department and escorted by soldiers, arrived at the laboratory, shocking all the scientists. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 successfully completed. Chapter 69, successfully completed, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 69, successfully completed. This document discusses the energy supply method and the manufacturing process for the spacesuit. After reading it, all the scientists were shocked, their scalps tingling with shock, as if something had just clicked. Wow! Incredible! This method can actually be used. Yes! This energy supply method is perfect. Low payload, high and stable energy output, enough to support long-term exploration on the moon. Yeah, and this spacesuit design is also excellent, but it feels a bit like Tony Stark's Iron Man suit. Ha ha ha! Anyway, to come up with such a design concept, he must be a genius. Quick, look at who signed it. As soon as the words fell, all the scientists reacted and began to search. Finally, they found the signature on the last page. But when they saw the signature, they were all stunned. It was just Lin Feng. Who was Lin Feng? I've never heard of a scientist by that name. The professor from Wukong University's history department was actually named Lin Feng. Everyone was puzzled for a moment, then noticed a line of small text beneath the signature. The core concept of this design proposal was provided by Professor Lin Feng from Wukong University's history department. Therefore, the primary authorship of this design proposal is hereby granted to Professor Lin Feng. Hiss! Everyone gasped, stunned. Professor Lin Feng, it really is Professor Lin Feng, incredible. This is truly incredible. Isn't Professor Lin Feng a history professor? How come he even has such a deep understanding of energy dynamics? Yes. He's incredible. Is this a true genius? Everyone was stunned, unable to believe this. After a long pause, a respected old professor regained his composure. He pushed his reading glasses and broke the silence, saying, "Okay, now is not the time for surprise. Time is running out. Let's vote now. Raise your hands if you agree that this energy design proposal should be implemented." As he spoke, everyone raised their hands simultaneously, without hesitation. This meant that the design proposal had won everyone's high approval. The old professor glanced at it, then raised his hand and said, "Okay, unanimously approved. Let's proceed according to this design." Time was running out, and the scientists sprang into action. With the most challenging energy supply issue resolved, and all the scientists and technicians working around the clock, the timeline for the manned lunar rocket kept shrinking. Finally, it was completely completed in just 10 days. And all the simulation data was correct, with no issues at all. The scientists and technicians were thrilled and cheered. Ha ha ha, success, done in 10 days. 10 days ahead of the planned 20, yes, we did it. A manned lunar rocket, ha ha ha, many people danced with joy, some even burst into tears. This could be considered a revolution in Chinese rocket history. And they were both participants and witnesses. Successful announcements of completion were sent out from the Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center, Wukong University. Professors and scholars from our university met with those from Jingchang University for a meeting. Today's meeting had been called unexpectedly, so no one knew what to expect. Then, the presidents of Wukong University and Jingchang University entered. Both beamed, as if they had encountered some great news. Everyone present was curious. The two presidents sat down. Zhao Songgang, president of Wukong University, said without further ado, "Everyone, we have good news from the Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center." Good news? Everyone was stunned by the words. Then, a surge of joy filled their hearts, and they asked, "What good news, President?" "Yes, could it be that the energy supply problem has been solved? If so, that's truly great news. Well, once that problem is solved, all other problems will be minor." Everyone was buzzing, discussing the good news. Zhao Songgang, upon hearing the discussion, smiled and raised his hand for silence. After everyone had quieted down, they paused. He smiled and said, "The Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center says the manned lunar rocket has been successfully completed. It's 10 days ahead of schedule, ahead of the previously planned 20 days. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. A manned lunar rocket was completed 10 days ahead of schedule? How? How could this be done? Impossible. Everyone's face was filled with disbelief. After several seconds, they began to ask, "Principal, what's going on? How could it be completed 10 days ahead of schedule?" "Yes, this is incredible. Ha ha ha, great. This way, we can carry out manned lunar exploration as scheduled." "That's right. This is a big deal, but I'm still curious. Did they say before that there were huge difficulties in providing the energy for the manned rocket? How can it be completed 10 days ahead of schedule?" Everyone was excited and chattered non-stop. After all, the successful completion of the manned lunar rocket meant that they could land on the moon and explore. However, some were also curious about the progress of the project. Why did it suddenly feel like it was taking off? Seeing the crowd's reaction, Zhao Songyang smiled and said, "It wouldn't have been possible to move so quickly, but Professor Lin Feng has overcome the biggest challenge in manned rockets, which is why the progress is so fast." Wow! This statement was met with an uproar. Everyone was astonished. It was overcome by Professor Lin Feng, and Professor Lin even knew about technology. Everyone was stunned, incredulous. Someone asked, "President, Professor Lin knows about this?" "Yes," Zhao Songyang said excitedly. However, someone else asked, "Then why didn't you notify Professor Lin to come? I don't think we should bother him with a meeting like this, it's not important. Let Professor Lin come after the launch is successful. That would be more meaningful," Zhao Songyang said with a smile. He had called Lin Feng before arriving to tell him about this. Everyone understood. This was just an announcement meeting, and Professor Lin didn't need to be present. However, they suddenly realized that if this were the case, then Professor Lin could be said to have single-handedly driven this manned lunar exploration project. He first suggested that there might be traces of the ancient continent on the moon, and then went on to solve the problem of manned rockets. Under these circumstances, as long as Professor Lin was willing to show up, he could almost take 90% of the credit. Hiss. Everyone thought of this and took another breath in surprise. At this time, Chen Haitian said, "Today's meeting is partly to announce this period, and partly to ask everyone to vote. I believe that manned lunar landing and lunar exploration is a major discovery. The results of this discovery are of great significance to Earth. Therefore, I have decided to broadcast the lunar exploration live. What do you think?" Chapter 70, Live Broadcast of Manned Lunar Landing? Chapter 70, Live Broadcast of a Manned Lunar Landing, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 70, Live Broadcast of a Manned Lunar Landing? Everyone was surprised by this, then immediately agreed. "Sure. I think this is a great idea, right? This is a major event that concerns Earth and all of humanity. It should be broadcast live." "Ha ha ha, Principal Zhao, that's a great idea, but there's a question. If we land a man on the moon and explore Earth and find no trace of the prehistoric continent, what should we do?" "Well, that's a matter for later. If we don't find anything, there's nothing we can do." "Yes, and besides, at least we tried. It showed the world China as execution and determination to explore the unknown." "Yeah, that makes sense." There was a flurry of discussion. Zhao Songyang heard some disagreement and raised his hand to signal for silence. Then, he said, "Let's put aside the arguments and vote by show of hands. The minority shall obey the majority. Those who agree to broadcast the entire event, raise your hands." Most people raised their hands, though a few, after careful consideration, eventually raised their hands in agreement. Zhao Songyang was a bit surprised, but he didn't dwell on it. Besides, he already agreed to live a stream. He smiled and said, "Okay, unanimous approval. Live a stream approved. I'll go report this to my superiors right away." Less than 30 minutes later, Zhao Songyang hurried back, a beaming smile on his face. He announced that his superiors had approved the live stream and would be issuing a notice to all major news media outlets and online platforms. Everyone cheered excitedly. With the state's order issued, major news outlets began scrambling to report on the matter. The front pages of online platforms like Weibo, Penguin News, and Taoxiao all went red. The news was right there on the front page, and anyone who clicked on it could see it. Instantly, the story became a sensation online. Netizens were thrilled upon learning of the situation. "Ha ha ha, my country is so awesome. They've built a manned lunar rocket so quickly, wow, that's amazing. We're actually about to start lunar exploration, ha ha ha, that speed is incredible." Live broadcast? Is this true? Am I dreaming? The person above, is there a possibility that you can't even dream of this? Ha ha ha, where can I sign up? I want to be an astronaut and explore the moon myself. I want to go. Get out of my way. I want to be an astronaut, and then what? Your favorite Zizilang jelly, Grandpa and Grandma, ha ha ha. The internet was abuzz with excitement, joy, and euphoria. It was understandable, after all, this was something that truly lifted the spirits of the nation. First, they had successfully landed a manned rocket on the moon and were developing lunar exploration. This was a revolution in rocket technology. Second, they could go to the moon and search for traces of the ancient continent. Either of these events was truly inspiring, And not just online. Most schools, except for those in their senior year, began organizing live streams on the day of the moon landing. The goal was to allow students to witness this thrilling moment firsthand. And the Chinese were making such a big fuss that the news spread online, causing a huge stir. Oh my god, China actually built a manned lunar rocket. Is this true or not? What's the big deal? We in the US developed a manned lunar rocket last century. Puchy, that's hilarious. Yours is fake, right? Ha. Is China really going to explore the moon? I really hope we find traces of the ancient continent, and in the US, the CIA. Unlike what was being reported online, the CIA was already in a state of panic. The news that China had built a manned lunar rocket, and could even conduct a full-scale exploration of the moon, had them feeling oppressed and threatened. Damn it. How did China suddenly develop a rocket like this? Why are they so anxious? Have they already got evidence proving there's a prehistoric continent on the moon? Impossible. No matter what, this can't go on. One step slow, every step slow. If China really finds traces of the prehistoric continent on the moon and obtains some information, we'll be left behind. Yeah, quick, contact NASN and have them build a manned lunar rocket as soon as possible. We want to explore the moon, too. If they can't, then make them give a reasonable explanation. The CIA was scrambling. After all, this was a major event that could affect the United States. Shield. Snap, Pierce slapped a piece of news on Nick's desk, announcing that China had developed a manned lunar rocket and would soon be landing on the moon to search for traces of the prehistoric continent. His expression was grim. Take a look, what is that? Nick picked it up and looked at it. Oh, that's what it was. He put it down again. He'd known about this all along. After all, being an agent wasn't for nothing. Pierce frowned, puzzled. China's reaction is a little unusual. They seem incredibly obsessed with this. Could it be that they've already grasped the existence of a vast continent on the moon? Pierce couldn't help but wonder. But Nick smiled and said, be patient. Take a look at this. He pulled out a rather heavy, overflowing mail bag. What is this? Photos of the moon, Nick said. I asked NASA for them. They've observed the moon for years and taken countless photos. This is just a few, but they haven't found any strange signs on the moon. It's all desolate and desolate. So, China's efforts this time are for nothing. Pierce's eyes lit up at that. He quickly pulled out a handful of lunar photos and flipped through them. Sure enough, all he could see were craters, nothing else. And everywhere was filled with a lifeless, silver-gray color and a desolate atmosphere. Every photo was like that. Great. As long as there's no trace of the primordial continent on the moon, it's fine. Just look at them busying themselves, Pierce said excitedly. Of course, if they were in their place, sending a manned lunar expedition, they'd naturally hope to discover traces of the primordial continent. That way, they'd have a head start, getting to know the primordial continent first. And who knows, maybe even gaining something useful. Yet, Nick nodded and smiled, as if he'd already foreseen a situation where China's comprehensive exploration would yield nothing. Meanwhile, on Loki's side, using the power of the cosmic cube, he wandered through the space rift. Finally, he spotted a massive interstellar battleship ahead. However, this interstellar battleship was completely dark, as if it had fallen into silence. Chapter 71 Countdown. Chapter 71 Countdown, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 71 Countdown. This interstellar battleship is pitch black and has no special shape. It looks like a huge, upright sword. It is full of awe and murderous intent, as if it was built specifically for war. Hiss, Loki took a breath, shocked by the shape of the battleship. Found it, the Dark Elves battleship. After being shocked, Loki became excited. It appears here, which means my speculation is correct. In the battle that year, the Dark Elves leader Malekith was not killed. Instead, he drove the battleship and used the power of space to escape. Then, to save his life, he chose to remain silent. Loki looked excited. Immediately, he used the power of the cosmic cube. With a flash of blue light, he entered the interior of the interstellar battleship. He saw that the surroundings were pitch black, without a single sound, and a dead silence. Almost every one of these dark elves possesses immense power. However, I wonder how they compare to Sun Wukong. The scene of Lin Feng transforming into a stream of fiery red light, like a meteor, and crashing into the Chitauri's interstellar battleship that day was etched deeply in Loki's mind. However, The Dark Elves were a race that rivaled Asgard in its heyday, demonstrating their immense strength. But no matter what, I won't be invading China this time. I need a different tactic, Loki pondered as he groped his way forward in the darkness. A moment later, Loki reached the control room. He surveyed the empty space, carefully examining the bizarrely shaped instrument panels, then found the button to start the battleship and pressed it. A strange engine roar echoed throughout the ship. Lights flickered in the previously dim corridors. And suddenly, behind Loki, a hissing sound echoed. It sounded like a gas leak. Tap, 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 then, heavy footsteps echoed across the control room floor. Loki turned and saw a towering being. It was Malekith, leader of the Dark Elves. Loki smiled and said, "King of the Dark Elves, Malekith, welcome back." "Who are you?" Malekith asked, his voice heavy and vengeful. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, his skin a pale blue, giving off an air of darkness, evil, and violence. "Who I am doesn't matter," Loki smiled, delivering his prepared words. "What matters is that you've slumbered for 5,000 years. Now that the 9 realms are about to connect, it's time for you to awaken and return to the 9 realms?" Malekith looked at Loki calmly, without reacting. Loki smiled again and said, "Don't you wish to find the ether?" Malekith's expression finally shifted. He was silent for a few seconds, then asked, "Do you know where the ether is?" "Yes," Malekith asked. "What do you want?" Malekith knew that there was no gain without gain, and the man before him must have some ulterior motive. "I want to rule the planet where the ether is." "Sure," Malekith said without hesitation. This showed that he recognized his own strength. And in the entire universe, as long as he put his mind to it, there was nothing he couldn't do. "Then you can tell me now, which planet the ether is on." Although Loki didn't know where the ether was, he knew his goal very well. So, he put on a cunning smile and said naturally, "On Earth." "Earth?" Malekith asked in confusion. Loki realized that Earth was not a common name among the 9 realms. He changed his words and said, "It's the Midgard." "Midgard?" Malekith pondered. The Midgard is the hub of the 9 realms. If the ether is going to appear somewhere, then the Midgard seems to be the most likely place. Thinking of this, Malekith looked up at Loki. He was wondering if the man in front of him really knew, or if he actually had another purpose and was just leading him to the Earth. But after watching for a long time, he didn't see anything unusual on Loki's face. The other party still looked sincere. Malekith retracted his gaze. The ether was extremely important to him. As long as there was a clue, he would go and look for it no matter what. Thinking of this, he said, "In that case, let's set off for the Midgard." After Malekith finished speaking, he was about to control the star battleship. But Loki hurriedly stopped him and said, "The Earth now has very powerful power. I think we should make some preparations." "Powerful power?" Malekith asked doubtfully. "Are they using the ether now?" "That's not the case," Loki said. "If that's the case, then there's nothing to worry about. The power of the Dark Elves is beyond your comprehension. A mere Midgard can easily destroy our race." Malekith said this lightly, seemingly not taking Earth seriously at all. He controlled the space battleship, breaking through the spatial barrier and speeding towards Earth. At this moment, there was still half a day before the launch of China's manned lunar landing rocket. Earth, China. The Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center was conducting a final inspection of the manned lunar landing rocket. This manned rocket was significantly different from previous rockets. It was assembled from an ordinary rocket and an aircraft-like device, one on the left and the other on the right. However, the wings of this aircraft-like device were much shorter, far less than those of an airplane. However, it exuded an interstellar and technological aura. A beautiful reporter faced the camera, excitedly introducing, "Hello everyone, this is the live broadcast room of the manned lunar landing program. Now, we can see the launch pad behind me, where hundreds of technicians and scientists are conducting final checks on the rocket. As everyone knows, this manned spaceflight is my country's first manned lunar landing. It can be said to be a technological revolution. Furthermore, judging by what Professor Lin Feng mentioned, the significance of this lunar landing is undeniable. It's currently 10:11 a.m., and the rocket launch is scheduled for 11:50 a.m. As you can see, the weather here is excellent today. The sun is high in the sky is clear, and there's not a single cloud in the sky. Does this also indicate that our lunar exploration mission will be a smooth journey?" The female reporter spoke excitedly and loudly, standing in the strong northwest wind, her heart filled with anticipation for the historic moment to come. The live stream had already been flooded with netizens, and they too were excited at the sight. Ha ha ha, it's finally starting, holy crap, this rocket looks so different from any other rocket, nonsense, how can this be compared to any other rocket? This is a manned lunar rocket, ha ha ha, launch it quickly. Don't wait any longer, don't worry upstairs, this is a big deal, we need to check it thoroughly. Yeah, this thing that's going to land on the moon, a screw error could lead to complete failure. Oh, am I the only one who noticed that the reporter is pretty, with so many people here? I secretly eat a mouthful of shit, no one should notice, right, and it's not just China. Other countries are also paying close attention to this matter. After all, this is a big deal, and it can be said to be a big deal for the Earth. As long as there is a person living on Earth, there is no one who doesn't pay attention. Chapter 72. The United States is also preparing to launch a rocket, and South Korea is preparing materials for applying for World Heritage status. Chapter 72. The US is also preparing to launch a rocket, while South Korea is preparing its application for World Heritage status. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 72. The US is also preparing to launch a rocket, while South Korea is preparing its application for World Heritage status. Foreign netizens are also discussing this. Oh my god, China really did it. Are there really traces of the ancient continent on the moon? That's just a speculation, it's not confirmed at all. Yes, then why is China so persistent? They even developed a manned rocket in such a short time, aiming to land on the moon. Haha, who knows, but in my opinion, China's efforts will definitely be in vain this time, because if there were traces of the ancient continent on the moon, we in the US would have discovered it long ago. And it's not just the foreign public who are paying attention to this matter. Foreign high-ranking officials are also paying attention. However, their high-ranking positions give them a different perspective on the issue. Great Ying Nation, what is China planning? Making such a fuss based on a mere professor's speculation? Is full-scale lunar exploration just a cover, and the real intention is to flex their muscles? The United States, hurry and prepare. If China truly discovers traces of the great continent on the moon, we will immediately launch a manned rocket to land on the moon and conduct excavations. We absolutely cannot let them get ahead of us. The United States, the lunar environment is harsh, with radiation, temperature, and difficulty moving around. The demands on spacesuits for full-scale exploration are too high. China's spacesuits are absolutely incapable of this. The Sakura Nation, HMPH. A junk rocket assembled in such a short time. Don't let it explode the moment it's fired. That would be a joke to the world. The Koreans, hurry and prepare the materials. If China discovers something on the moon, we will immediately apply to the United Nations for World Heritage status, claiming that the traces of the great continent were left by our ancestors. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, time passed quickly. On the screen, people could see the scientists and technicians who had been conducting final checks on the launch pad evacuating the area surrounding the launch pad. They left the launch pad in vehicles. It didn't take long for the area around the launch pad to clear. But then, the beautiful reporter stepped in front of the camera again, beaming with excitement. She announced, "Dear viewers, there are less than 10 minutes left until the rocket ignites and launches. And we just learned that the biggest challenge encountered in the development of this manned lunar rocket was actually solved by Professor Lin Feng of Wukong University." It's said that the scientists were incredibly busy that day, but Professor Lin's words inspired them to find a new approach and successfully resolve the problem. The beautiful reporter grew increasingly excited as she spoke, her eyes curved and her smile radiant. So, if it weren't for Professor Lin, the development of the manned lunar rocket wouldn't have been so smooth, and it wouldn't have been completed so quickly. Professor Lin is truly amazing. And of course, we're also grateful to those scientists and technicians for their tireless dedication. You are all pillars of our country. These words instantly stunned the entire audience. Professor Lin solved it, holy crap. Is this true? Yes. Did I hear correctly? It has to be true. This is a live broadcast, how could he be talking nonsense? Ha ha ha, Professor Lin is amazing. He can even solve technological problems, holy crap, is this what knowledge means to change one's destiny? Ha ha ha, Professor Lin is amazing. That's amazing, Professor Lin is incredible. He knows so much at such a young age. Wow, I'm the same age as Professor Lin, and I still ask my parents for living expenses. Netizens were thrilled, posting comments one after another. The comments were filled with praise for Professor Lin's amazingness, and so on. For a moment, The comments were extremely lively and dense. A moment later, the countdown to the rocket launch was almost over. The beautiful reporter reappeared on camera, holding her phone and excitedly announcing, "Dear viewers, the countdown for the launch of Star Exploration 1 is about to begin. Let's count down together." Holding a microphone in one hand, the reporter looked at her phone and said, 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1. After the countdown, the reporter turned to look at the upright Star Exploration 1 in the distance. There was a faint whoosh sound, muffled due to the distance, and then flames appeared from the bottom of Star Exploration 1. Star Exploration 1 slowly ascended with a rumbling sound. The reporter, overwhelmed with excitement, turned to the camera and said, "The launch was a success. We can now see Star Exploration 1 gradually rising." The audience in the live broadcast room were also nervous and shocked when they saw this scene, worried that the launch would go wrong. But as they saw the rocket lift off smoothly, their anxiety gradually eased. Then, another barrage of comments followed. "Ha ha ha, it's lifted off. Awesome. Holy crap. Mock loops. Look. It's a mock loop. Ha ha ha, let's fly. Fly to the moon. Ah. I want to get in there too, and explore the traces of the ancient continent on the moon. Kid, study hard. With education, you can do what you love in the future." The comments were endless. Star Exploration 1 had already reached a certain altitude and began its first stage separation. The base of the rocket fell away, and the second stage began to generate power. The second stage erupted with a huge flame, mock loops appeared, and the speed increased, reaching a higher altitude. At this point, the giant airplane-like device didn't need to be activated. The flight to the moon was entirely carried by the rocket. The beautiful reporter, thrilled by this scene, exclaimed, "This moment is destined to be recorded in Chinese history. We will tell future generations what a feat we have accomplished. This is our first step in exploring the starry sky. Our journey will be to the vast sea of stars." At Wukong University, President Zhao Songyang and Professor Feng Min beamed at these words. However, they also knew that this experience was entirely thanks to Professor Lin Feng. The new reactor aboard the Star Exploration No. 1, and the supposed presence of traces of a prehistoric continent on the moon. Without Professor Lin, humanity wouldn't have embarked on a comprehensive lunar exploration. Today's action may impact the future of all mankind, Zhao Songyang said with a smile after a few seconds. Indeed, Professor Feng Min agreed. Then, he sighed. "It's a shame we can't witness this spectacle with Professor Lin." "Yes," Zhao Songyang nodded. They had originally planned to watch the rocket launch with Lin Feng. But Lin Feng had called them before and said that he would be away for a while to see the famous mountains and rivers to see if he could find any traces of the prehistoric continent. If he couldn't find any, it would also be good to find records of other people from the prehistoric period. Chapter 73 Star Exploration No. 1 has lost contact. Chapter 73 Star Exploration No. 1 has lost contact. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 73 Star Exploration No. 1 has lost contact. However, Professor Lin must be watching the live broadcast now, Zhao Songyang said again. Yes, Feng Min nodded. Now the whole country, and even the whole world, are paying attention to this matter. Moreover, this matter was promoted by Professor Lin. If there's anyone who hopes to find traces of the ancient continent on the moon, it must be Professor Lin, so no matter where he is, he must be watching the live broadcast. They don't know that Lin Feng is now in the famous mountain and river of the moon. Lin Feng has already made the layout, and the next step is to wait for Star Exploration No. 1 to land on the moon. He also saw and heard the excitement on Earth. A smile appeared on his face. It will take 2.5 days for Star Exploration No. 1 to land on the moon. It will probably land on the moon at 2:15 p.m. on the third day, 2 days later. Because, if there are really traces of the ancient continent on the moon, then it must be on the back of the moon. If it were on the front side, the side facing Earth, it would have been observed by the government long ago. However, it would take Star Exploration 1 quite some time to circle the far side of the moon and land on it along its planned trajectory. The audience kept following the live broadcast. Time slipped by. Soon, 2 days had passed. Star Exploration 1 had entered the far side of the moon and was within its planned orbit, about to touch down at its landing point. This was also the most dangerous and crucial juncture, prone to uncontrollable factors. At the Quanjiu Satellite Launch Command Center, dozens of technicians were busy. Computers beeped continuously, and various data points were constantly changing, recording the status of Star Exploration 1. The orbit is normal, no deviation, the lunar periphery is normal, no meteorites or obstacles have been detected, all data from Star Exploration 1 is normal, the 4 astronauts' vital signs are normal. Each team of technicians reported the relevant data. Chief Engineer Zhang Mingyang listened to the data reports, his face tense as he stared at the large screen. The screen displayed the real-time footage captured by Star Exploration 1. The moon was just ahead, seemingly within reach. Yet, this was the most dangerous time. Despite hundreds of successful landing simulations, no one could be certain of what would happen in the real world. It was like Schrödinger's cat. But Zhang Mingyang felt a slight sense of relief when he heard all the data was normal. He said into the microphone, "Zhou Hao, how are you feeling?" A second or two passed before the astronaut's voice came through. "Everything's fine, that's good," Zhang Mingyang said. "It's 2:03 p.m. now. In 12 minutes, Star Exploration 1 will touch down. Be prepared." Another second or two passed before the astronaut's voice came through. "Roger that." The audience in the live stream watched this as well. They were all excited to see the landing on the far side of the moon. Ha, is it finally landing? It's been such a long wait. Holy crap, we can already see the moon. Ha, isn't it time to explore? Hurry up. I can't wait. I can't imagine how excited I'd be if we actually found traces of the ancient continent on the moon. Ha, the comments were boisterous. The audience was eagerly anticipating lunar exploration. Meanwhile, in the United States, at SHIELD, Nick was watching a live broadcast. China's Star Exploration 1 was about to land on the far side of the moon. This was the most vulnerable time for accidents. Pierce hurried in and asked, "Nick, what's going on? Landing in about 10 minutes, so soon?" Pierce was a little surprised and also came to the computer to look at the screen. After a few seconds, he was still confused. "Do you think China doesn't know about the moon, or do they have some evidence? Otherwise, why are they so obsessed with exploring the moon?" Pierce still couldn't understand. Nick shook his head and didn't answer. He'd previously learned from NASA that there was no way any trace of the great continent existed on the moon. He'd initially believed that. But now that China was about to land on the moon, he felt a strange wavering feeling, wondering if China might actually discover something on the far side. After all, images taken by machines were far less accurate and authentic than those taken by humans. Pierce added, "But I just heard from NASA that they're ready. If China successfully lands on the moon and indeed discovers traces of the great continent, they'll immediately launch a manned lunar mission and conduct similar exploration and excavation. In short, they can't lag behind China." "Yes, that's perfect," Nick nodded. That way, his worries were over. 10 minutes passed quickly, and the Star Exploration 1 was preparing to land. Control Center, can you hear me? This is Star Exploration 1 astronaut Zhou Hao. Star Exploration 1 has entered landing orbit, requesting landing. Landing approved. Be safe, Chief Engineer Zhang Mingyang replied. Roger. Landing, boom boom boom, a tremendous roar echoed. On the big screen, only half of the Star Exploration 1's rocket remained intact, still belching high-intensity flames. The large, aircraft-like structure on the right remained intact. The astronauts sat there. Boom boom boom, Star Exploration 1 was constantly adjusting its angle. The technicians kept reporting back. Drop landing trajectory, please continue adjusting. Drop landing trajectory, please continue adjusting. Everyone in the command center felt their hearts clench at the news. Fortunately, the fifth beep brought good news. Entered landing trajectory, calculated data is normal, please maintain. Star Exploration 1 adjusted its landing trajectory to face downwards and slowly descended. Everyone in the command center was stunned by this. Then, they erupted in joy. Great! Success! As long as we land according to this plan, there should be no problem. We'll be able to land on the moon and explore it soon. Ha ha ha! We're all witnesses of this era. The command center was filled with excitement. Hearing the excited voices, Zhang Mingyang also smiled, feeling more relaxed. Now that they had entered the landing orbit, there shouldn't be any more accidents. He said into the microphone again, Zhou Hao, how are you guys feeling? Everything is fine. After a second or two, Zhou Hao's voice came out. Zhang Mingyang heard this and was about to say, that's good, but suddenly, a strong electromagnetic sound was heard. Zzz. Hearing this sound, Zhang Mingyang's face changed. Then, with a bang, the image of Star Exploration number 1 on the big screen disappeared. And the screen went black. Zhang Mingyang's scalp instantly tingled. Chapter 74 Emergency. Chapter 74 Emergency 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 74 Emergency. Everyone was stunned. The next second, a collective panic erupted into a clamor. What the hell is going on? Yes. What happened? Quickly check the status of Star Exploration 1 and try to restore the live broadcast function. We need to know what happened. Checking, trying to reconnect the screen. Report. Star Exploration 1 has detected a powerful lunar magnetic storm and has been trapped in it. What? Lunar magnetic storm? How could this happen? Damn it. These cosmic magnetic storms are unpredictable and uncontrollable. Quick, try to remotely control Star Exploration 1 from the surface to escape the lunar magnetic storm. Yes, the technicians bustled about. The sound of communication and equipment alarms blared incessantly. The audience in the live broadcast room were also stunned by this scene. They had not expected such a thing to happen. They immediately asked questions in the room. Oh my god. What the hell is going on? Yes. How could this happen so suddenly? I don't know. But no one can predict such things. Could the landing fail? Find a solution quickly. We're already at the entrance of the moon. What a shame if the landing fails. Yes. Find a solution quickly. Damn, is the moon so dangerous? The above person is talking nonsense. The Earth has many dangerous natural places, let alone a planet like the moon that doesn't even have an atmosphere. Wukong University. President Zhao Songyang and Professor Feng Min saw this and their faces changed. They couldn't believe it. At the same time, senior officials from other countries also saw the same situation. Sakura Nation, haha, isn't this a waste of effort? They're still trying to land on the far side of the moon? Aren't they just asking for trouble? Big Ying Nation, I'm terrified. Watching China attempt a manned lunar landing is even more frustrating than my own inability to land on the moon. But thankfully, they couldn't either. America, overestimating their capabilities. All in vain. South Korea, this. China can't do this. I've already prepared the materials for the World Heritage application. America, SHIELD. Pierce was stunned by this scene. He hadn't expected this. But then he chuckled smugly, haha, China still can't do it. It seems we, the Americans, will have to land humans on the moon and explore. Pierce believed that under these circumstances, China's Star Exploration number 1 was completely doomed and would definitely crash on the moon. Nick stared at the dark, silent live broadcast room. Silent. Quanjiu Satellite Command Center. Chief Engineer Zhang Mingyang, looking anxious, quickly spoke into the microphone. This is the Quanjiu Satellite Command Center on the surface. Starry Sky Exploration 1, can you hear me? Starry Sky Exploration 1, Zhang Mingyang called out several times. But Starry Sky Exploration 1 didn't respond. Zhang Mingyang's face was filled with anxiety and worry. But then, a fragmented reply, tinged with electromagnetic interference, came from Starry Sky Exploration 1. Command. Zizzy. Center. Zizzy. We've completely lost control. Zizzy. Only a few words came through, completely obscured by the electromagnetic interference. Yet, even from these few words, one could still understand the other party's situation. Zhang Mingyang's face paled in disbelief. The others were also stunned. Suddenly, the technician in charge of reconnecting the footage announced, "Report, the footage has been reconnected." As soon as he finished speaking, the large screen lit up, revealing the image. However, the image was tilted, with the moon directly below. This meant that Starry Sky Exploration 1 was plummeting towards the moon at an oblique angle. At this rate, the moment Star Exploration 1 touches the moon, it will surely disintegrate. Damn it, Zhang Mingyang hurriedly asked, can we remotely control Exploration 1 from the ground to adjust its angle? Report. It's impossible. Due to the lunar magnetic storm, most of Star Exploration 1's functions are disrupted, the technician replied anxiously. He was trying, but every time a red mark popped up on the console screen, indicating control failure. What did you say? Zhang Mingyang looked stunned. The audience in the live broadcast room were also stunned by this scene. The next second, they realized what was happening and sent out anxious comments. Oh shit. What do we do? Isn't this the end? Damn it. How could something like this happen so suddenly? It's over. It's over. The lunar exploration plan is going to fail. I can't accept this. Let's keep thinking of a solution. Are we just going to give up? There are still 4 astronauts on the Star Exploration 1. What can we do in this situation? Fuck, I can't bear to watch this anymore. I can't bear to watch this anymore. For a moment, the comments were filled with comments that people didn't want to watch anymore, because if they continued watching, the Star Exploration 1 would definitely crash into the moon. Most of the foreign leaders were gloating, thinking that China had worked in vain. They had gone to great lengths to build a manned lunar rocket based on a hypothesis, and then something like this happened right before it landed on the moon. They didn't even know if there was any trace of the ancient continent on the moon. It was all in vain. But did this also mean that China's national destiny was in jeopardy? Otherwise, how could such a coincidence happen? Many people speculated. Report. Star Exploration 1 is 300 meters from the lunar surface. Report. Star Exploration 1 is 200 meters from the lunar surface. Report. Star Exploration 1 is 100 meters from the lunar surface. Upon hearing this data, everyone could no longer bear to watch. They all closed their eyes, awaiting the final moment with agonizing heartache. This time, the manned lunar exploration mission had failed. Zheng Mingyang also closed his eyes, unable to bear to watch any longer. His heart was filled with pain. On the one hand, the failure of the project, which had attracted worldwide attention, and on the other, the 4 astronauts aboard Star Exploration 1, they had sacrificed their precious lives exploring traces of the prehistoric continent. However, after waiting for several seconds, there was no sound from the system alarm. Everyone was puzzled. What was going on? 100 meters should be a quick journey, but why was there no alarm? Some people, puzzled, looked up. But when they saw the scene on the big screen, they collectively gasped, their eyes widening in disbelief. What's going on? I don't know. A miracle. This is simply a miracle. An excited clamor rose. Chief Engineer Zheng Mingyang was puzzled. He looked up at the large screen. His eyes widened in shock. On the screen, a soft white light supported the Star Exploration number 1, preventing it from falling further. Chapter 75 Global Sensation. Chapter 75, Global Sensation, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 75, Global Sensation. What the hell is going on? Zheng Mingyang was shocked, his mind froze. This scene was so sudden and so out of the ordinary. The audience in the live broadcast room also gasped and looked shocked when they saw this scene. After several seconds, they came to their senses and excitedly posted comments. Holy crap! What's going on? Incredible, this is too incredible, yeah, it's absolutely shocking. How did this white light appear? Did any one of you see it? Describe it to me. I couldn't bear to look down, so I closed my eyes and didn't see it. Me too. Someone come and explain. I saw it. The Star Exploration number 1 was about to crash into the moon, but suddenly a beam of white light rushed up from below and held it up at a very fast speed. It suddenly occurred to me that this situation is very similar to the methods used by Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buda. Does this mean that the moon is really a fragment of the prehistoric continent, and that there are traces of the prehistoric continent on it? Holy crap, the analysis above makes a lot of sense. It makes sense. When I think about it this way, there is a high possibility that there are traces of the prehistoric continent. Don't jump to conclusions about this kind of thing. Don't forget that there are aliens in the universe. The last time we saw Hong Kong City, we can still remember it vividly. The audience was thrilled. This proved that something truly existed on the moon, otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. However, whether it was related to the Great Desolation continent remained to be determined. After all, this was a very serious matter, potentially concerning the future of all humanity, so it was too early to draw conclusions. Unbeknownst to them, the white light had been sent by Lin Feng to save the Starry Sky Exploration 1. Otherwise, Starry Sky Exploration 1 would have crashed directly into the lunar surface. Wukong University. Zhao Songyang and Feng Min watched in disbelief. They had thought Starry Sky Exploration 1 was about to crash into the moon. They hadn't expected such a sudden event. Hiss, Zhao Songyang came to his senses, took a breath, and exclaimed in surprise, "What's going on?" "I don't know," Feng Min asked, puzzled. Suddenly, a thought struck him, and he exclaimed in surprise, "But, for this to happen, it means there's definitely something on the moon, otherwise, it wouldn't be like this." I think it's very likely related to the Great Desolation continent. Zhao Songyang was startled by this, and it made sense. Fang Min added, however, nothing has been discovered yet. Perhaps it's something else. Yes, you're right, Zhao Songyang nodded. He also understood that this matter was of grave importance and that no conclusion could be drawn based on the current situation. The foreign leaders were all stunned, unable to believe the miraculous scene before their eyes. Great Ying Nation, what is going on? Sakura Nation, oh my god, this is unbelievable. Russia, oh my god, what am I seeing? The United States. Quanjiu Satellite Launch Center. On the large screen, the Star Exploration 1 was supported by a soft white light. Zheng Mingyan came to his senses, took a breath, and exclaimed in shock, what the hell is going on? Zheng Mingyan had just given up, believing the plan had failed. But he had never expected this. At this moment, before he could even think, the technicians' excited voices came over. Report. The lunar magnetic storm has passed, and the Surface Control Center has re-established contact with the Star Exploration 1. Everyone present was stunned by these words. Immediately, cheers erupted. Yes, that's great, it's okay. It's okay. This is truly great, ha ha ha, after all the darkness comes a new light. I finally understand the meaning of that poem, don't get too excited just yet. I wonder if we can correct the landing angle of Star Exploration 1. Yes, that's right. Upon hearing this, Zheng Mingyan didn't hesitate and immediately called to the technicians, quick, try to control Star Exploration 1 to correct the landing angle. Yes, the technicians, excited and nervous, began to try. Now that contact with Star Exploration 1 had been re-established, remote control was possible. Zheng Mingyan then spoke into the microphone, Star Exploration 1, can you hear me? If you can, please answer. After a second or two, a clear voice, free of electromagnetic interference, came through. Star Exploration 1 receiving this. Surface Command Center, the lunar magnetic storm has passed, and all equipment is functioning normally. Hearing this, Zheng Mingyan breathed a sigh of relief. He added, Zhou Hao, Surface Control is correcting the landing angle of Star Exploration 1. Please stay in touch, roger that. Then, on screen, a small energy flame erupted from the left side of Star Exploration 1. Driven by the flame, the tilted spacecraft gradually straightened. Once fully upright, the flame vanished. Everyone rejoiced at the successful correction. But then, the soft white light instantly vanished, as if it had never appeared. Without the support of the white light, Star Exploration 1 slowly descended. Everyone was immediately surprised. What was this white light? Why did it feel like it was purposely saving Star Exploration 1? It appeared when danger arose and disappeared again when the danger was over? Everyone was puzzled. Boom boom boom, boom. At that moment, Star Exploration 1 landed smoothly on the moon. Everyone held their breath, worried about an unexpected incident. But after a few seconds, nothing happened. Star Exploration 1 remained stable. Everyone was excited. Yes. Success. Ha 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 ha. A successful manned lunar landing. China did it. Great. We can explore the moon. Ha ha ha. Regardless of whether there are traces of the great continent on the moon, this time our actions will go down in history books. The audience in the live broadcast room cheered upon seeing this. Ha ha ha. Great. A successful lunar landing. Awesome. So awesome. We're finally getting to explore the moon. Holy crap, is the main film about to start? Ha ha ha. The foreign leaders were all stunned by this. They had previously believed that China would never be able to land on the far side of the moon, but reality slapped them in the face. China had successfully and safely landed. This was a monumental achievement. Excluding the possibility of finding traces of the great continent on the moon, the fact that China had landed a man on the far side of the moon was a huge accomplishment, putting them significantly ahead of the rest of the world. Great Ying Nation, damn it. Watching China successfully land on the moon is more painful than me not being able to land on the moon at all. Sakura Nation, fake. Could this be fake? Is this a computer-generated image from China? The truth is, just now, during a lunar magnetic storm, China's manned rocket crashed on the lunar surface. America! Exclamation mark. Quick, contact NASA headquarters, South Korea. Great. China, get exploring. I've prepared all the materials for the World Heritage application. Quanjiu Satellite Launch Command Center. Zheng Mingyan was thrilled by the smooth landing. He asked into the microphone, Johao, how are you feeling? After a second or two, Johao's response came. Everything is fine, that's good. From now on, you have 15 minutes to organize and check the equipment bay. After 15 minutes, if there are no problems, you will open the hatch and set foot on the moon to explore. Any problems? No problems, Johao's firm voice came a second or two later. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.